Good evening and welcome to the Scarborough Board of Education workshop. The date is February 27th, 2025. Ray, can we call the attendance, please?
Yes. Mr. Kelleher.
Here.
Ms. Leon.
She will be late.
Ms. Lindstrom.
Here.
Ms. Peterson.
Here.
Mr. Rockenstar. Here. Ms. Trapinian.
She will be late
Ms. Trapini Huff.
and she will be late.
Ms. Ledger.
Here.
Ms. Raskina.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ray. Would everyone please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Agenda item 4.0 is new business. 4.1 is the district's pre-K program. So I'll give it to Diane to tee up
Yeah.
first.
Great. No, we are excited to speak with you this evening to provide you with information about pre-K in general, what that looks like, what that has looked like in the state, and some information in regards to our district. We have our three primary school principals with us this evening, as well as Katie Vitro, our curriculum director. Specifically, Dr. Martin has worked in this pre-K realm for us as a district for a period of time, as far back as 2017, 2018, when there was a pre-K task force. Kelly oversaw that work, and Kelly also currently serves as our liaison for our pre-K partnership. And so I am going to hand this over to Kelly, who has lots of great information to share with all of you this evening.
So put together a pretty comprehensive overview for you of a bunch of different components of pre-K. So I'll try to go slow, but feel free to stop me at any time. There's also a note taker that I don't know if did they get that?
It was in their board packet.
In your board packet,
Mhm.
okay, so that can kind of help you kind of keep track of your questions as you go along. But I wanted to really set the foundation with what is pre-K, because I think when we hear about, wanting pre-K or, looking at pre-K in a district, that can mean different things. So just wanted to kind of talk about what are the different funding models for pre-K. And I think universal pre-K is what a lot of people think of when they think of pre-K. And that's a publicly funded model for all students, pre-K for all students in a district. And as we'll get to a little bit later, we'll see kind of how frequently that occurs actually in the state of Maine. Another model is targeted pre-K, where you offer pre-K to some students based on set criteria. So it might be students with particular needs or particular set of income standards or other risk factors. So it could be funded by the school department as well, locally funded, but you're targeting a certain demographic group. Head Start, I'm sure many people have heard of. That's a federally funded program. That's birth to 5, and that is targeted at low-income families. And there is a Head Start in Maine. Of course, private preschool is, as we'll talk about later as well. There's a lot of that in Scarborough and a lot of that in Maine. Those can be nonprofit or for-profit, and those are independently run of the department. And then there's this coordinated pre-K, which is what we are in right now. And that's a pre-K that's offered in partnership with a public school and a private program. And it can be grant funded, which is what we're doing, supported by the DOE. And it's just a way in a lot of states, this happens in a lot of states, to kind of grow and, foster that growth of pre-K programs within the school departments. So another kind of, all of these photos also are from Shooting Stars, our pre-K classroom. So you can enjoy those as we go along. I also wanted to kind of understand myself, because I am not a pre-K expert. I do want to preface that, but just kind of learn myself, about some of the approaches to pre-K. Ruth Hughes, our pre-K director, couldn't be here tonight. She would have added to this as well. We did meet and talk about some things. But I think, you know, as a primary school principal, receiving students into kindergarten and knowing, you know, different kinds of how kids are in different places when they come into us in K. And this really kind of speaks to that in terms of all the different approaches to pre-K. You know, and in one column, you have sort of different program approaches or philosophies, and then the pedagogical approaches. And just to kind of lay out how broad some of these differences are, you have like a Montessori approach on one end that is really very self-directed learning, experiential learning, really not academic at all. It's actually kind of stays away from that. Playway is another one that is more in that end of the spectrum, all the way over to High Scope, which is really very evidence-based, pre-academic, getting ready for school. And then others are kind of a blend in the middle. And a lot of them share this play experience-based, hands-on, self-directed, you know, components, high parent involvement. But this focus on academics and school readiness is really a big variable among some of these different approaches. So it's just kind of important to understand that not all approaches to preschool and pre-K are the same. I wanted to dig into a little bit of the research, and I think this is important to understand. To me, it's about managing expectations. So prior to 1980, only 2 states in the United States funded universal pre-K. And that really picked up in the 80s and 90s, mostly due to the foundational research of the Perry Preschool and the Amy Stadarian project. And which I'm sure people have heard about in terms of their findings, but maybe not by name. And those 2 studies really pointed to, you know, kids who have early intervention are going to do X, Y, and Z later in life. You know, they're going to have higher achievement. They're going to, you know, have better behavior outcomes. They're going to avoid the school to prison pipeline, all of those things, which are really positive things. The limitations to those studies was that they were done in really highly controlled environments with primarily Black children and of low-income families. So the studies that are run today and the 3 foundational studies that are really becoming the cornerstones of the research now in Tulsa, Oklahoma, there's an ongoing study in Boston and one out of Vanderbilt in Tennessee, are really speaking to that those can't be generalized to what we look at today when we look at preschool programs. And the results from the current research is saying that the results for students who attend pre-K are mixed. And what those results tell us is that students who attend pre-K will have a high initial boost in their school readiness that really quickly goes away once they enter school. So they're ready for school, but then those effects kind of dwindle really quickly. The things that hold on, there's a moderate boost for school attendance and you know, being at school, reduced chronic absenteeism, you know, overall school engagement. So there's some longitudinal studies that show that, you know, students might, you know, be involved in more AP classes in high school and things like that. So being more engaged in those pieces, those tend to be more durable over time. So those are really positive results. So it's not quite as cut and dry as the studies before that were like, you know, pre-K equals this. Some questions that are still being asked. There still is a significant boost for minority and low income students. So the research is very clear that when, you know, early intervention is applied to those groups, there's a really significantly positive effect. a question that's being examined is, does the quality of the pre-K program matter? That's still kind of mixed. It's not really definitive. A bigger question that's being explored now is it the quality of the school program that kids go into? If they have a good pre-K program, why is there that drop in school readiness or achievement when they go in? So what's that match of your pre-K program to your school program? So that's just something to consider as you go into it. So then anecdotally, like, why does it matter to us, right? So one thing that Ruth and I talked about, and I know that Anne and Jen and I have talked about a lot, is that parenting is different. You know, childhood is different now. You know, Ruth talked to me a lot about how kids in pre-K that she sees have different skills than they did 5 or 10 years ago. Kids who've never held a pair of scissors, kids who haven't held a pencil. And we see that coming into kindergarten. So that school readiness piece can be challenging. And that's not all kids, but that's some kids, right? So those early learning experiences for kids, whether it's because of, you know, the pre-K program or what's happening at home or whatever that, I don't have the reason for that, but those continue to change for kids. And it's always been and will continue to be a part of kindergarten to close those gaps. And that's just a reality. And what do we know about what parents need? We know parents are looking for childcare, and that can be difficult to find. It can be difficult to find pre-K spots. We'll see that a little bit later. And we hear from our parents that come into K, you know, they're looking for support around K readiness and that transition to kindergarten.
Really quickly, for those that are watching and maybe don't know, can you just tell everybody who Ruth is? If you wouldn't mind.
Yes.
Thank you.
I did a slide or two back, but Ruth Hughes is the pre-K director at Shooting Stars. Do this too far. Now it's not going well. Oop. Did I go too far?
Do you need us to move it?
No, I got it. I think I got it. Okay. All right. So pre-K in our area districts and pre-K in FY25. So just some data points to think about as we consider, okay, what are other people doing, right? So in this past fiscal year, 91% of districts offered some form of pre-K in Maine. Over 50% are less than 25 hours a week. So something to think about. And there are no current grants to develop or support the expansion of public pre-K. So the grant we have now, those are done. And there's also not a mandate, as some people think, to have pre-K. It is a local decision. It's supported by the DOE, it's encouraged by the DOE, but it's not a mandate that you have a pre-K program in your district. And so, you know, Diane and Ray and I kind of chose the districts that we tend to compare ourselves to and laid out, you know, so there's the district and then the number of classrooms they have within those categories. So you can see there's only those 2 districts that have universal pre-K. And I think was that within that list?
So yeah, those 2 are universal.
In the state?
There's, that's from the state.
That's
and I
in
confirmed.
the whole.
There's a couple that they don't claim to be universal, but they have enough slots, but they don't want to say they're universal because if they run out, they're not hiring another teacher.
Right. Okay. So you see some districts have quite a few classrooms. Saco has a combination of full-time, which is considered 5 hours per day, and part-time. Just to give you a sense, there's some pieces that are growing within these communities and some that have been established for a while.
Is part-time 2 hours? Yeah.
Is it better?
Anything under 5 hours?
Anything under 5.
Okay, so it's not per start.
Mhm.
I think it's helpful to know too that the full time is over 5 hours, which could be that 5 hours, or it could be the length of a full school day, depending on where the program's placed as well.
Yeah. So for some kids, they go the full school day, which is about 6.5.
And I can say, the districts that are listed as part-time pre-K, those follow kind of the traditional half-day program. So there's a section in the morning and a section in the afternoon, as many of you might recall, we used to do with kindergarten.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Back in the day.
So to your point, the districts that go over that go a full school day, those are considered full-time.
Yes.
Yes. Those could be in that group.
And how many hours is the Shooting Stars program?
We're gonna get there. We're gonna get to that.
Jump ahead, don't you worry. Do you know if these pre-K programs are inside their school buildings, or are they much similar like Shooting Stars where they're a separate program and then we have road funding? One answer there.
Don't know the answer
Yeah,
to that.
I don't know the answer.
I think that most are within the school buildings, but there are some that have some different sites in different spots, you know.
Mhm.
Portland does, and
Right, so they might be, in the basement of a church or, right, utilizing other community spaces.
So that's a good question. We could follow
Mhm.
up on
Yep.
how many.
Absolutely.
The other piece I looked at was, looking at our own students, and this data is based on, we collect where students go to preschool in two different ways. We have a survey that goes out to parents, asking them a bunch of different questions about their incoming kindergartners. And then on registration paperwork, there's a question about preschool. So there, as you can see here, we have 213 kindergartners currently. 79% of those attended some kind of pre-K program. 3% did not attend. There is 16% that didn't answer. So we don't know, we weren't able to verify that. We cross-checked those two data sources and didn't have an answer on either one. And 3% repeated kindergarten. So it just gives you a sense of how many kids attended. And then you can see, and this is pretty typical, kind of where the bulk of kids, kind of our heavy hitters in terms of Little Folk and Toddle Inn and Heidi's House. Those are the bigger programs. And then there's this big chunk at the bottom, which is other programs. And that's made up of 38 programs that all have gets 5 or fewer kids in each program. So there's just a lot of scatter, and those are not just in Scarborough, there are some that are in other towns. So people may choose something that's closer to their work,
Mhm.
it's more convenient. There might be a lot of reasons for that. We can dig into that, but just gives you a sense of, it may have more to do with some of the choice in approach as well, because that when kids are younger, that can drive those decisions too. So that's just a snapshot of where our kindergartners go and how many go. So then moving into our current partnership, which we are in the first year of this partnership, which has been absolutely fantastic. Grant funded. We went through an application and approval process with the Maine DOE, which is ongoing. We meet with them regularly. Shooting Stars already had a great program, and they made some minor tweaks to meet this MOU. They had to make some grade level shifts, they had more grade levels together, and pre-K can only be with, they can't be with certain grade levels, so they made those appropriate shifts. They've made some minor curriculum shifts to align with us. So they've just been wonderful to work with. Blue Point has been the hub for enrollment, registration, health, compliance, those kinds of things. And school nutrition brings them their lunch and snacks, and so it's been pretty seamless. There's 2 teachers and 16 students. It's full-time, 5 hours a day. They go 9 to 2. And all of the curriculum is listed and linked there and in your packet. Ruth tried to kind of mirror what we do in terms of our specials. So we have art and music and PE, so she tries to bring in weekly karate, music, dance, cooking, these types of things to kind of get kids used to those experiences and that kind of a schedule. And it's a wonderful environment, and she invites anyone who'd like to visit from the board to come and see it. It's really great. And then there's a large document about chapter 124 that's linked in your packet that you're welcome to peruse, but I wanted to pull out some highlights in terms of what the requirements are for pre-K in Maine. And a lot of it is very similar to, what we look at for kindergarten programming or school programming, but there are some differences. So class size is 1, class size is smaller. Shooting Stars is at the max, 16 kids, with a ratio of 1 adult for every 8 students. And there has to be at least 1 certified preschool teacher and it can be more than 1 teacher, but it has to be at least 1. And if you're gonna have some kind of ed tech, then there are some requirements around that. They're a little different than what we use. And then the instructional time that we've talked about a little bit. So it's a minimum of 10 hours a week, up to 35 weeks. Can't include rest time. I did fix that typo, and I apologize for that on here. And it can be scheduled within that 175 school days, but it doesn't have to use all the days. So they're trying to allow school districts flexibility, whether you're going to do that half day or, you want to use some days for screening and, those kinds of things within that window to be a little more flexible for 4-year-olds. Any furnishings, playground equipment has to be the right size for 4-year-olds. So, when you're thinking about bringing it into a school, be looking at, do you have the right equipment? Do you have the right stuff? And then recess, they can only have recess with either other pre-K students or kindergarten students. So just some things to think about. So what are the cost drivers for pre-K? Space, there are some space requirements that are not, I don't think they're very concerning. Maybe 35 square feet per student of usable space. So you have to really take out everything that's not student. No cubbies, no sink, no door swing. It's like 560 square feet in total, which I think would be compliant with what we have for classroom space. I think the bigger drivers are staffing ratios, what you need to add for furnishings, curriculum, professional development. I think what I'm sharing with you tonight is kind of the tip of the iceberg. Pre-K is different. There's I think early child development is different than kindergarten. There are a lot of similarities, but there's a lot that's different. These are the standards. There's different standards that the curriculum aligns to. And I think as you build programs, you look at some districts who have like 9 classrooms or over that. Those classrooms need access to school nurses, multi-language teachers, social work, special education. So as you grow the program, the capacity of those positions, as everything else that we do, we build and increase budgets, you just have to consider those pieces are going to increase as well. And is going to drive those costs as well as school nutrition. Transportation is not required, but if you're going to have transportation, 4-year-olds require a 5-point harness, so you're going to transport them differently. Before and after care capacity, your parents are going to be looking for that. And then as it grows, and at what's the tipping point for someone to coordinate it or be the administrator for it? So those are just some things, you start small, start with 1, but as you grow, like there's a cost even to start. But as you get bigger, it's a ripple effect. So I don't know, Diane, if you want
Yeah,
to say a little bit more
Sure,
about that.
no, and so, on that slide, you'll see that, we've estimated the startup cost per classroom at $175,000. That is based on, we budget, uh, we would need to be budgeting for salary and benefits. And as a general rule, salary and benefits that we budget for a teacher is $100,000. Because some of you may not realize how much benefits really do cost, but they are quite hefty. And we budget $50,000 for every ed tech position in the district. So out of that 175, year over year cost would be 150 per classroom. We're estimating around $25,000 as a startup cost for materials, furnishings, curriculum, et cetera, for a classroom. The other piece in terms of the finances, I think, Kelly talked about the reality that there are not grant opportunities that are available at this time to expand pre-K. We do have the ability to have pre-K fit into our EPS model. For those of you who aren't as familiar with EPS, I could direct you to a great presentation that our Miss Kate Bolton, business manager, gave at a recent finance meeting. So we could certainly attach that to today's minutes. But to give you the 20-second snapshot of that, basically the state has a formula for what they call essential programs and services. And so what they do is they allocate different costs for different things. And then that is how our general purpose aid comes to us as a district. And the rate at which we receive general purpose aid is based on what the state has decided as our economic standing, our community's ability to pay, our tax base, if you will. How am I doing so far, Kate? Right on there, money? Okay. And so what that means is funding for public pre-K is really different for every unique district. So districts who are high receivers for state funding would receive higher allocations for pre-K. Districts who are low receivers of funding would receive lower allocations for pre-K. If we looked at FY25, which is the year that we are currently in, the funds that we receive overall for our school budget equates to about 11%. And so that means that the local taxpayers would incur 89% of the cost of public pre-K. And again, that is just a piece of information, a fact, right? And so if you think about that slide that Kelly showed a few slides back with different districts and how many programs they had, we could probably easily look at those and make some assumptions based on what we know about the economic status of some of those districts. And so it is absolutely true that there are some districts that are much further along in their ability to provide public pre-K than others. And obviously, funding is a big component of that.
So if I just did some quick math, for our 213 kids, that roughly equates to about $2.4 million, of which our 11%, we would have received about 256,000. And the remainder of the 2.4 million would have been taxpayer funded.
Yes, I have not checked your math here in this minute.
Yeah, but roughly that's what we're saying.
If you were gonna do for all, yes.
For every, because if you offer it, we need to make it
No.
No,
I mean,
Again,
I'm sorry, if we're gonna offer universal pre-K.
if you were gonna do universal, yes.
Yes.
Like that is what it means.
so the other piece of information before we just open this up to questions is really also wanted to clarify with you this evening the difference between public pre-K and what many of you have probably heard about CDS services.
Mhm.
And so CDS is Child Development Services. Those are special education services that are provided to children birth to age 5. And so last year, there was a statute that was passed that basically delegated the responsibility for CDS services beginning at age 3 to local districts. And that is a requirement. And that statute provides that by July 1st, 2028, every district takes on the responsibility for providing special education services for 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. And so there are a few districts who are in a pilot right now. So there is an opportunity for districts to decide when they want to start, if they want to be early adopters, or if they want to wait and see how that's looking. Certainly, I think the larger your district is, the more complex it is to start considering what that model might look like. Here in Scarborough, we are working really closely with our regional partners in Greater Sebago Alliance to study what a regional model might look like. CDS services is very different than public pre-K because those are targeted services. And so you can receive services under CDS without being in a public pre-K program, right? And so what that means is we would look at a student's IFSP, which is the equivalent of an IEP in school, and we would say, okay, what are the services that are here? This student needs to receive an hour of speech services a week. This student needs to receive an hour of OT services a week, et cetera, et cetera. And then it is the district's responsibility to contract with providers to provide that service. Where that service takes place, when that service takes place, those are all local decisions. And so they don't necessarily have to take place at our schools during the school day. We have to be responsible for the oversight of those services. And those services are funded at 100% for all districts. Because basically what we're doing is the state is currently paying CDS to provide those services. And what they're doing is they're picking up those funds and saying, we're not going to have CDS be the direct provider or organizer of these services. We're going to dole that off to school districts. And so CDS services are not part of our EPS formula. So a minute ago, when I told you that we only receive 11% for the programming that we provide, this statute would be funded at 100% for all schools. Because as you know, special education services are mandatory and required, right? And those are currently being paid for by the state to CDS. So I just wanted to really separate those two things, because what we're talking about this evening, our workshop around public pre-K, it is not the equivalent of CDS.
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Okay, really quick before we dive in with questions and discussion, just to kind of frame what we're doing here. So very quickly, this is something we've all been interested in for a while now, discussing, and we had planned on hearing from Ruth at a later date, just an update as to what's going on, how it went, what opportunities there might be. But what's happened concurrently is that the building committee has been meeting and trying to really wrap their heads around pre-K, and is it something, they feel that they would like some direction, as if it's direction from us, as it should it be something that they're considering in their build. When we initially set out with the charge, we did not contemplate pre-K, we contemplated a K-8 or K-12 solution. I'm really focused on our kids that we were mandated to provide education for. So with the hope, I know, and please, Alyssa and Jillian, feel free to jump in. I think what I understand the building committee is hoping to get from us tonight is some sort of understanding as to what we're doing going forward. Are we going to offer this? Are we not going to offer this? Should they be planning for it in the build? Should they not? Just a little bit more direction. And then for those that are here listening and online listening, we, just so you know, we don't typically take public comment at workshops. But when we start up our regular meeting, there is a point where we offer general public comment. So that would be the time to provide comment.
And to speak to that, we have had quite a few discussions. Thank you for the SBAC members who are here. And probably online. I'm sorry, I can't see you, listen. And, you know, Jillian and I were able to stress that, you know, there's not a huge likelihood that we're gonna walk out with a full-blown plan for years to come, and here are our answers, here are everything. But the ask is like anything that we can provide to move forward with, because we're really, you know, when we're sitting in the room, we want to do right by our students, by our taxpayers, make sure that we have everything that needs to be considered. So anything that we can even rule out, rule in, give them some sort of direction to move forward, would be kind of imperative to kind of helping this move forward, because as many problems as we can answer in the room would be great. So just to piggyback off what you were saying.
All right, I'm gonna open it for questions or thoughts or.
I have one question. You said that the state would fund based on 100% based on what they pay CDS. Is that like a one of those things where it's like a particular, you know, it's like your insurance company, like, oh yeah, we pay 100% up to $50, or is it just like whatever we bill them? So like our hourly rate that we would pay as speech
For
therapists?
CDS.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, great. So, all right. And how many, do you have any idea? You said you were studying it regionally, and that's awesome, but do you have any idea what to expect? Like how many kids come in now who have had an IEP for a year or two?
So here's a great example. We are getting ready for next year's kindergarten. And every year during this time, our principals start getting involved in CDS transition meetings,
Yeah.
right?
And
Scarborough has 50 incoming students with IEPs.
Okay.
We don't have a total number of kindergarten students yet because registration is still open, but we know that there are 50 students that are identified that will need an IEP for kindergarten. That is also the number that we had. That was a similar number this year, correct? Right around 50
Yeah.
of 200. So that is a very high percentage
Yeah.
to say
Yeah.
that, you know, this year's current kindergarten, 25% of our students are identified with special education needs.
Can I ask kind of a few clarifying questions? So when people talk of pre-K, is it just 4-year-olds or is it 3 and 4? Just 4, thank you. Sorry, elementary questions at times.
Okay.
Not even
All
pre-K
good.
questions. And kind of at the beginning of the slide, you had talked a lot about like the different approaches between the Montessori and all the other ones. Is it state dictated how a town would approach, or is it the school system's opportunity to come up with an approach as to how they feel their program should be run?
I mean, I think there are certainly some approaches that are preferred,
Okay.
Yeah,
but
you have to like, again, I know Kelly linked in the chapter 124 requirements, and those requirements are quite specific.
Yeah.
And I think I heard you say, Kelly, you know, Ruth is a longstanding provider of a pre-K program here in Scarborough. And even though she meets the star ratings and has a high-quality pre-K program as designated by the state, there were still some shifts that she needed to make to meet the state curriculum.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then I just, I want to make sure I heard this correctly, because it's a frequent narrative I hear. There is not a pre-K mandate coming down the pipeline.
Right.
And then the 5-point harness for pre-Ks, I'd never really considered that when needing to move them school to home, home to school. 2 questions when it comes to that. I assume school bus would not work.
Well, we do have students that, I don't know the exact answer to that, but we do have students
That-
now who use a 5-point harness.
On a traditional school bus?
But not,
Oh.
The
I'm
front
not
rows of
sure.
seats on the
Front
newer
rows.
buses do, and all of the newer buses we're
Okay.
purchasing will have this going forward.
And I can
So
share
the
with
ability
you-
to clip them.
Yeah, okay.
So they're not like set up on the buses, but the way in which we are purchasing them moving forward.
Okay.
And I can share with you in prior districts where I've worked with pre-K students, they were on regular school buses. It's not like a vehicle's car seat
Right. It's a little
installed, it's
vest.
just clips that are
Oh,
installed
Yeah.
and
Okay.
straps that are installed into the bus
We can
seats.
benefit what we have, but we're buying them now, so we won't have to moving forward.
Okay, that's great. Thank you
Yeah,
for clarifying
just
that. And then I kind of had heard you say that during recess, they are only allowed to have recess with pre-K and kindergarten.
Yeah.
Does that rule, regulation, whatever, carry to the bus?
I don't know the answer to that.
No. Okay. Sorry, I'm seeing it if I had shaken.
Yeah, I previously.
People have worked in different
I
districts.
previously worked in another district in which I supported pre-K programs, and our pre-K students went to school 4 days a week and then later 5 days a week, and they rode the bus with K through 5th grade students.
You just put them up front.
Yep, they're in the front seat where those 5. Thanks, Katie.
Thank you.
Regular big buses.
Alright, I think that's all mine. I could pepper off right away.
I just want to clarify off a question that she had. So is there like a cutoff to when they have to turn for?
Yeah, it's
Just
just,
like when
it's
you
just
go-
like kindergarten.
So it'd be the
It's
same,
like
okay.
October.
I was thinking,
October.
because like
Yeah,
my
yeah.
daughter went to pre-K at 3 because her birthday's in October.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it would change how it was.
And some private programs that are preschool type programs, they're not necessarily pre-K, they're more of a daycare, 3 and 4. So people may be thinking of 3-year-old programs in that sense.
And please cut me off if this is not the appropriate setting to ask this question. Have we investigated other private preschools that may want to have a partnership like Shooting Stars?
Well, remember, we don't have any finances at the current time because the public-private partnership that we currently have is completely grant funded. And so we received that grant, we applied for that last spring and we were successful in receiving that. So that paid for this school year. It is a 2-year grant. There are some steps that we need to take to renew that grant, but we fully expect that we will receive that. And that would carry us through to FY '26. But at the end of the 2 years, our partnership with Shooting Stars would need to be locally funded.
Because we have no expectation that another grant is coming.
That's
this
correct. There
time.
are not any grant funds available at the state. And I'm not sure if you've heard, but it doesn't look like there's a great financial outlook.
Right.
It is,
I feel like it's coming.
We got in right at the right time.
Yeah.
yes, right under the wire.
So as we think about, are there any other questions right now? As we think about providing some guidance to the building committee, I guess I'll go ahead and share where my thoughts are. I personally would love to have a universal pre-K program in Scarborough. My concern is that we have a lot of asks in front of this community right now. And we have a budget coming. That's always a difficult ask every year. We have a school that we desperately need. We need a solution for the kids we currently have, and that is mightily expensive. I know the town in general has another set of asks that the community, you know, and listening to the community and what they would like. And so I feel that I feel this might be not the right time for us, and I don't enjoy saying that as someone who really wants a universal program. I just am not sure now is the time. I appreciate our slow approach. I would like to see it grow. But to your point, I'm not sure how that looks. I don't know if community services, you know, we have a new director now. I'm not sure if that's something we can consider and potentially look at. But again, it comes at a cost. It's thinking that to have a universal pre-K program would cost us north of $2.5 million, and we could get 250,000 of that funded is, I don't know how in good faith I could make that ask right now.
You know, I'm with you, I'm biased in the sense that, of course, I want more classrooms for our working parents and just having places for our kids to go. I also come from a place where we did have universal pre-K, but again, that was state funded and we are most likely not going to be privy to that kind of funding. And it's hard enough right now to A, get a building passed, and B, get a budget passed, that I feel like asking for more is only going to hurt us now. But I would like to just kind of we've had it in the back of our minds for a while now, but I would like to still keep it in mind as something that we could potentially add on later down the line.
Yeah, I actually was pretty heartened to see some of the work that the building committee was doing. They have space that they're calling future expansion.
Yeah.
Right, I don't want us to cut our nose off to spite our face, right? So like in my mind, do I feel like I can ask this community to support this in the next 5 years? Like someone asked us that in an email we received. And my personal answer is no, I don't feel that I can. But I don't want us to be so short-sighted that we lose out on an opportunity for land. So the opportunity that's there for future expansion feels appropriate to me.
I think it's such a tough one because I would love to be able to kind of bust this program open, say 2.5 million, have all the support, move forward, just kind of like everyone is saying. But you know, is there a possibility that we can start building this into our budget and start?
Yeah, like one classroom at a time.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
I don't know that we'll ever get to the point where we can, in 1 year, figure out the teaching, the space, the students, the location, transport him, and everything all in one swing. So, you know, with this level of success that we've seen at Rising, shooting stars, sorry. And, you know, the students that we are really positively serving in the community, you know, is there an opportunity to shoot for one more classroom? Is there an opportunity to try and, because on some level, there is an appetite within the community. This isn't an ask that we're making with no backing from our community, no interest, no nothing. Or can we start trying to serve more students and start doing half day? And you know, that's a way to grow it. So more students are seeing services and kindergarten readiness, helping our primary school, you know, receive kindergartners who are, you know, kindergarten readiness checklist further, you know, all of those things where can we serve more students with half days or in any way grow the program? Because I think we could wait 5 years, we could wait 10 years, and we could do it this year. I think a full swing ask it's going to be a very hard sell again today or in 10 years. So I think, I don't know what it would necessarily look like, but if we can start the process, and I think I would like to see it maybe try to grow by a classroom. I don't know how.
Trying to remember, we had the lottery system
for this current year. And there were about 40 potential kiddos, maybe at the very beginning. But the restrictions, the limitations of 9 to 2:30 with no before or after, that compromises, and no transportation, that, compromises a lot of people's opportunity to take part in that. So when you talk about wanting to expand it, you can expand it as much as you want, but if parents can't make that work because they have to work more than 9 to 2:30 and they have to not transport their children, they work someplace further away than Scarborough, that's gonna add another layer of difficulty, right, and complexity. And not that you can't do it, you just have to also plan that part of it in there.
Yeah.
I think also with Shooting Stars still being grant funded right now, we haven't even really felt what it would be like once that grant is over. And I think maybe when we experience what that might feel like, it might be the good time to start working at other, potentially adding on more pre-K programming.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because we aren't feeling the budgetary impacts of the one class we do have.
Yeah.
And that won't be until 2027.
Will be next year's budget ask,
Yeah.
right?
Right. So really, in reality, even if we were to add one class on, we're really talking about, for the community, they're feeling two in 2027.
And can you remind me, if we open a public pre-K, is transportation to and from required?
I mean, I also would question if a lot of parents would opt not to.
They might, but if it's required, gotta.
Yeah, right, no, right, but it's, yeah. I know South Portland continues to have, I can't remember how many classrooms you said they had. They have what, 4 elementary schools?
I think it's four.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they-
Four
well,
pre.
they-
What did you say pre-K?
And how many pre-K classrooms are there?
How many?
Four.
So they have 1 in each school.
Maybe, yeah. I'm not sure
Yeah,
how it falls.
I know that was difficult for them, and they ended up like rearranging their middle school plans and bumping 5th grade over. So it's now 5 to 8. I heard about that the other day, and I didn't realize that, but so they're on a lottery system, and they have been for years, and I know that they don't provide transportation for their K-5 buses are already full. So it's interesting that I don't know what that even looks like for us.
Did you, when you say, ours does not have pre or post care, so it limits number, is there an ability, like if my child went to Shooting Star, was picked in the lottery, could I pay Shooting Stars for before separately?
They
No.
don't have that as part of their program.
Oh,
right?
I see.
So the Shooting Stars program has 3 classrooms, right? Like that is their model. And so, in developing the partnership, we have one of those 3 classrooms. They have another classroom that is similar to our classroom. And then they have a high needs classroom for students with more significant special education needs.
So they don't even offer, so that's not even an option for.
Right, that was
Right
not an
now, got it,
option, when we partnered with them, and, we did not have the ability to, provide for that as well.
Is it community services that provides our before and after care?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there anything about their, whether it be licensure, whatever, that would preclude them from taking if, somehow it got built into the Blue Points, the Eight Corners, the Pleasant Hills and everything, is there anything that would block their?
We haven't had conversation with
We
them,
haven't.
so I would not want to,
Absolutely.
project how I think that
Yeah.
they might or might not respond.
But there's nothing like that we're already aware,
No,
that it's from a licensure standpoint or.
I don't.
I don't know.
Yeah, we don't have that information.
No.
I can tell you though that their current programs have long wait lists.
Yeah, it's like the
Oh,
Hunger Games to
really?
get-
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for the current student.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can. And there's limits on the capacity of how many kids can be in a program, right? So there's 38 kids that can physically be in the Eight Corners program because of the size of the gym. Yeah,
Oh,
so
interesting.
you know, so that's either going to eliminate some kids who need it, who aren't there, who can't get there because the pre-K is gonna be there. Or, you know, so that's more of a limitation than anything else at this point, because the programs are full and there's a wait list, and it's not like there's 10 spots just sitting there empty that nobody's using that could, oh, a pre-K kid could go there, or a sibling could go.
How many kids are, remind me how many kids you have at Eight Corners?
240.
Ish.
Yeah.
So of the 240-ish, 38 can go to after school and before school care. Is there plans?
I believe that's the correct number. It's not, it's right
Yeah,
around
well,
there.
just
Yeah,
at a-
yeah, yeah.
Roughly speaking,
Roughly,
that's what we're
yes.
looking at.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
So is there plans, I'm trying to recall the building plans. Is there plans on the building options to expand the schools? I'm sorry, to renovate the schools. Is there plans to expand the gym?
In some cases, yes, and not in.
Not in
all.
every model.
Okay, well, that's something to take back, because how can we even have future expansion where we contemplate pre-K if we don't have the gym space to do it anyway?
We have, Harriman's brought that up quite a few times about making sure that when we are baking these plans in of future expansion, that all major components, cafeteria, gym, et cetera, are extremely challenging to build on versus throwing up a couple more classrooms onto the extension. Like Wentworth was built so that, my understanding is from their presentation, is Wentworth was built in a way that their gym and cafeteria are fit to the capacity with expansion. So if we put on those other two wings onto Wentworth, their gym and cafeteria are already sized. So
That is correct.
the encouragement from Harriman has been to make those considerations as we're baking in future expansions, things like that, plotting land, where are we putting the building on the land, and et cetera, to size those appropriately, but not every building option is moving forward with that recommendation or considering it.
And then,
Yeah, one seems to have to go with the other. I don't know how we can even have the start if we don't have
yeah.
an opportunity to even give them more space.
I mean, that's a great point too, because, you know, the families of the community will really feel that. I didn't consider the fact that aftercare would be driven by the size of the gym, things like that. So it's helpful. Thank you for pointing that out and having that at the forefront. Because I think, you know, along with pre-K is childcare. Where's my kid going? Well, I have to wrap up my day till 5:30. So a lot of those things.
What
Well,
are
I'm
you
sorry
at?
Audra's not here, the new community service director, because she could answer those questions so much faster and
sure.
with more accuracy, but you know, I'm sure that the laws too, the requirements, the guidelines for what schools have to do with pre-K to have nobody but kindergarten have recess with you and that kind of thing are probably very different for daycare situations that are a different licensure, a different certification process, a different, so you know, they don't need as many adults per student as we have in a public school. They can do more. So, you know, those kinds of things change once the kids leave school and enter before or after care, or when that magic time happens at 3:15 or 3:20, whatever it is, you know, suddenly not our kids anymore.
What do you roughly, do you know roughly?
I have 200 students, and I believe the number is almost the same, because the gym is.
The gym's about
A little
the
bigger,
same,
yeah.
right? And same, right?
Same goes for Pleasant Hill. We have 181 right now. And we're somewhere between 20 and 30 for the number of kids that we have in community services.
It's based on that.
Gym
Gym
size.
size.
Our gym is the smallest at Pleasant
Yeah.
Hill,
Yeah.
however. So I can't tell you the exact number of community services, but it's in that ballpark.
So, you know, so.
Like, I'm sorry I asked.
The other, you know, the other piece of or narrative that, you know, that I was hearing a few minutes ago is what is the ability for us to start building a program over time? And would that be, you know, more financially possible than taking a bite all at one time. And I think that's worth further exploration. I will say, though, that I don't think it's any surprise for you to hear me say that it would be a challenge for us to begin stepping that up at the current time, given our space, our space demands, which is why we're trying to find a school solution, right? And so if we're gonna be very honest here, the lack of space that we've had in the district has been the biggest hurdle for us to overcome, and the reason why we've not been able to be in the forefront of this conversation, aside from finances in the district.
Right.
Right? And so when the opportunity came forward last year for this private-public partnership grant, it was a perfect entryway for us to start, right? Because we knew that we didn't have the capacity or the space within our own buildings to start a program. And, you know, we had this gift in front of us in terms of not only could we find a way to secure funding, but then we also had our space, you know, question solved for us because, you know, that was included in that partnership model.
Yeah, I just feel like there's so much room that, you know, there's so much good that could come of it. Like the high school I went to, our pre-K for the town was baked into the high school rather than the elementary schools, and we got child development classes. A lot of the tutor teachers that graduated from our school went through that. They had, you know, all this experience going in, and I've learned so much, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
that's
I mean,
for CTE programming, right? So we don't have a CTE programming on site, program on site, right? Like our students go to WRVC or to PASS. And so that's part of an experience offsite.
that's really cool. Yeah, I did. It was really nice.
Yeah.
My daughter did the same program when she was in high school.
Yeah. Is
I
there,
just, sorry. I don't know how to do it, but I would love to keep the conversation moving forward. Like, I'm afraid that we're gonna walk, like, I get that we don't have the money and we can't like approach private businesses and say like, we want to do this and everything. And I'm just weary of kind of not starting, starting something. Not that I'm not taking away from the wonderful work of stop saying rising stars. Shooting stars and all the progress that that entire program has started. But I would just love to see growth on that. And
well, we have 8, I'm just looking at this list of facilities that are outside of Scarborough Public Schools. Looks like 8 outside of Shooting Stars, 9 if you count Shooting Stars. Is there a potential, if we have funding, to add 1 extra class somewhere else? Or Shooting Stars?
So I want to make sure that I'm understanding your question correctly. So the ask is if we found a private partner
Mm-hmm,
and we assumed the pre-K cost for a classroom.
mm-hmm.
So I would just remind you that private pre-K programs get upwards of $400 a week per student. And that is not the reimbursement model
Oh, no,
that
no.
even our grant.
Yeah, let me
Yes.
rephrase.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not thinking we're gonna
Okay.
get $400 from this. No. If we fund, oh,
Do you see what I'm saying?
yeah, I'm thinking if we funded it.
A private
we're-
partner is not going to give us a subsidized rate.
Right.
They know how much they get per student.
Got it.
they have a
And
waiting list.
public's, you know, public rates, it's the same as, right, what is the cost of an education? Public education versus going to a private school.
Mhm.
They're not commensurate.
Well, I don't think we're gonna solve that answer tonight, but like you, I would like to, I think she's got a headache. Like you, I would like us to keep the conversation going. Mhm.
No, for 16.
Would that include, would $400 a week include the cost of the teacher and the ed tech, or in addition to?
Well, again,
Okay.
a public-private partnership, those people aren't our employees, right?
Yeah.
And so we're paying
Shooting Stars a contracted rate overall. The teacher, they actually have two teachers, right?
Yeah.
But again, they're not on the pay scale of Scarborough Public Schools, right? We're paying a contracted rate overall for that program,
Mhm.
and they pay their staff. Our grant is somewhere in the amount of $160,000, which is close to what I quoted you,
Mhm.
right? Again, I'm probably off by a few thousand, but that is a good rough number. But that is how much that program is costing this year in totality
Mhm.
Through grant funding.
through grant funding.
I mean, could our guidance be to please consider, and I know that this could absolutely cause a complete meltdown throughout the community, because we've taken away a classroom, we've added, but ask them to consider, have, whatever their whatever the final plan is, to have at least a couple extra classrooms for something like this coming down the pike.
Are you saying like increase the contingency?
Well, that's what I was gonna try to get at was my
I was gonna
next.
say that.
Well, my questions was going to be, can we increase the contingency back? Like, what is the harm? And I'm thinking out loud
And
and.
can you explain that for people
Yeah,
who are
okay.
listening who might not know what our contingency is?
I
So
don't know.
contingency is, when we had our enrollment study done, we were given a number of, that is a projection based on prior years enrollments.
And birth
Birth
rates.
rates.
And birth, oh yeah,
And my.
very
information.
complex.
We can show you the numbers
Yes.
if you wanna see it.
The contingency is the percent that you go up on that, assuming that the number might not be perfect. So you can bake in a 5% contingency that will cover, a potential sudden boost in housing and 500 new families moved into Scarborough. Or a 3% contingency because only a 200 person
Yeah.
family build came in. The contingency is your kind of safety net,
Yeah.
is a nice way to think of it. It's a safety net if
Buffer.
the numbers aren't dead on perfect.
Right.
So currently 3%, looking at our SBAC chair.
Yeah, you're at 3%.
We're currently at 3% for our baked in contingency. So that's kind of what Jillian's referencing.
Yeah,
Oh, my-
but
Hold on a second.
the contingency conversation, has sort of been, back and forth a little bit, and so I don't know that that is the right ask. We could ask or say, we would like for you to bake in a few extra classrooms for this potential move, but also for any potential other changes that could happen.
I think it's come up quite a few times in SBAC, the amount of Wentworth not utilized. Like they're not at max enrollment. Although due to mandate changes over the past 10 years, every square inch of that building is being used.
Right.
So it may not have been drawn up in the plans that way, but no one's wasting a square foot type thing. So I think that can be a nice way to kind of bring it forth. I kind of go back and forth between, do we bake this into, there's a lot of concerns right now of the building costs. Reasonably, this is a very
Right.
expensive school solution. If we put this into the build as we shifted the building forward and future wing can be added, 4 classrooms, et cetera, et cetera. My concern would be that we never have the appetite to build it,
Yeah.
and that we have
Yeah.
to pass the bill.
Well, here's where my thought, and I'm coming to you, I know you wanna say something. My thought is what is the cost difference between when you have the construction company, employees, masons, all the people, all right, electricians, everybody it takes
for
to build a
sure.
building. When you've got them there already to build the other outfit, what is adding on another 1 or 2 classrooms? Maybe 3 classrooms, whatever the number is. I'm just
Whatever.
We have a cost per classroom.
Yeah, what is that? Because what is it today versus what is it going to be in 10 years? It's going to be two wildly different numbers, right? So if it's not a huge bump, and this is likely to not, I'm thinking out loud and I don't know how this would land, but what if you go ahead and build the classrooms and you leave them empty? If we're not going to fund it right now, or maybe we start with one additional class at a time in 5 years when we have it. I don't know. But is that a way to think about it?
I think that can be hard when we're at a place where people are trying to find ways to size down to help with the monetary ask of the public. That when we can't say we're baking it into the budget, we don't know the future of it, we don't know how we're gonna. I
They're
see that
they're gonna sit
They're,
empty.
they're
Yeah,
gonna say, you know,
empty.
why did I
Well,
put this up?
I mean, we're saying we're not at a place where we're asking for universal pre-K,
Mhm,
that we're gonna be growing it slowly.
mhm.
So does, whether it's increasing the contingency or, you know, likely we're gonna be in a place where it's a number of classrooms that are comparable to some of those districts that we saw on that slide. I mean, does that help kind of target, like, that's gonna be the path we're on probably in 5 years, that we're gonna have small number of classrooms, hopefully, or looking at growing it in that way? So creating that increased buffer of capacity would be helpful.
I mean, even in 3 years, we're going to have probably at least 50 kids that is somebody is having to there's somebody somewhere that's going to be coordinating something. An hour a week, 10 hours a week, I don't know if we know. So having that extra space for that ability, I don't know if those kids in other districts might be coming into the school to get that hour of physical therapy or what that even looks like.
Are you talking about CDS?
Yeah,
Because they didn't
sorry,
we say
I'm
we were
sorry.
shifting?
That's okay. No, I'm just trying to like,
Yeah.
Make sure we're on
Yeah,
the same.
different things.
Yeah.
Because we're shifting to us having to provide that and we
In
don't know
3
where, or this would give us the where.
I mean, we may need some space in a school for some sort of services or coordination, right? I mean, is that an unreasonable thought?
again, like, we're still in the very early discussion and planning stages of this, because I think there's also like full recognition that statutory changes happen quite frequently. And so, you know, right now, the mandate for CDS is July 2028. There is certainly room to see some changes in statute between now and July 1st, 2028, as we've seen in the past month and a half.
Yeah.
Right, when you have a change in leadership or a change in governance, then comes change in policy. So, you know, I would just caution us to say that it is with that specific, like, build in mind that we could repurpose that. That may be possible, but from a public standpoint, I wouldn't want to sell a project on that
Oh, yeah.
where it's, you know, still in motion, if you will.
And at least the current structure of CDS is they'll go to a Toddle Inn, they'll go to an R school. they'll
Right,
go to a
because
Slow
again,
Oak,
like,
and
if
they're
you're
like
like,
an hour
if you're
there.
thinking about
Yeah.
CDS services, if we had 10 kids that needed speech services, it's not gonna be a class of 10
Right.
with one speech therapist,
No,
right?
right.
You're talking about a one-on-one setting. That
Yeah.
speech therapist needs a very small space,
Yeah.
doesn't need to be in a full classroom, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a very different setup.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, Charlie wanted to say something really quick, so I'm gonna allow.
Sorry, I'm trying to be patient and wait for public comment, but to this, first off, thank you guys for doing this today. I'm the one that asked to move this forward, so I appreciate everybody adjusting.
Can you introduce yourself?
I'm Charlie Peters, I'm the chair of the SBAC.
Can you come and
You
sit
can
at the
come sit up
table
here if
so
you
we can
like.
hear him on the mic?
Look, there's a microphone right there.
Thank you.
The conversation that's happening right now around, you know, the contingency and do we increase future expansion and whatnot is really why I asked to do this, right? Do we need to have additional classrooms? I would be very I wouldn't be comfortable touching the contingency again. We can't continue to
Right,
ask
no.
our designers to redesign
Yeah.
to different enrollment numbers. So I
Yeah.
think we've kicked that horse a few times and we need to let them be what it is. What I would say is, you know, I've also asked this body to look at our benchmarking standards. And as you guys,
Yeah,
and
we're gonna
that's,
look at that
that's next week, right?
Yeah.
And so I think perhaps in that discussion, if we look at how many additional expansion classrooms would you like to see included in, right? Whether, and if it's one classroom and if it's a multi-school solution that we end up with, maybe there's a design that we add a classroom to a school. If we do a consolidated school, do we build in an additional classroom or two there? Rather than trying to play with the enrollment numbers again, perhaps you guys can just consider how many classrooms would you like to see, you know, added for future expansion, if at all. The other thing that I think is important as you guys think about this stuff is we're in the process of cutting scope to get to a budgetary number, right? That's just the reality of the situation that the school building project is in. Future expansion, frankly, right, unless we get some sort of mandate from this body, is probably one of the things that's going to get cut. So as you guys are considering where you want to see pre-K go, the reason we've asked for this is because we want to know, is that something to cut or not cut? Future expansion, whether that's what we call it or pre-K. But that's kind of just the situation that we're currently finding ourselves in within the school committee. So the building committee rather.
The future expansion.
Well, I'm trying to wrap my head around why that would be cut, because isn't that just
Yeah,
space allocated
that-
to?
Like where a building's at.
Some
where-
designs have intentional extra space in them today, right? And so my colleague James is here. His proposal from SBAC one is titled for primaries with room for pre-K, right?
Mhm.
That was the proposal, was we had extra space for that. And so since we don't really have guidance around pre-K, we've shifted to kind of, all right, let's talk about future expansion. We don't know what the pre-K program is going to be. But again, as we start to now reduce scope, right, square footage is the most costly part of the project. And so reducing classrooms, in some cases, also worth mentioning. We learned, you know, Harriman reran the numbers for us on Monday. We presented going from 5 to 3%, and 2 out of the 5 options didn't change the number of classrooms at all. Right? So again, if this is what you guys want in the building, I'd just ask for, make that ask deliberate. The enrollment numbers may not get us, you know, get what you're looking for.
I also think though that we'd have to be extremely deliberate in how that message comes across because.
Right.
One, it sounds like pre-K classrooms require 135 usable square feet per student.
35.
35.
not 100.
35. Oh, that's a smaller classroom than I thought. Like one child.
They're 560. They're.
But again,
Yeah.
they're open spaces,
Yeah.
right? So you can't count furniture into that.
Yeah, so that's not really the approach that we're taking to sizing these buildings and all of those things. And also, you know, each we're out a few, but A to G is so different in its approach that I don't think we can look at you and say, give us 3 extra classrooms. That feels good, because I could look at
Option
8
A.
corners and say, I'm giving you 3 extra classrooms. She'd scream at the top of her lungs with excitement.
Right.
But I could look at Pleasant Hill and say, we're giving you 3 extra, and she might scream with slightly less excitement and excitement. You know, all of these have different needs and you're
Yeah.
keeping all of them. So it's gonna be really challenging for us, I think, you know, a consolidated school, you're building new and you put 3 in, and 1 year they could be a 3rd grade, 1 year they could be a 2nd grade, 1 year they could be a pre-K. It's all a floating thing. But when we're thinking about these major renovations, minor renovations, we're gonna have to be extremely deliberate in how we say, add 3 classrooms to A, but make sure 2 of them are in 8 corners and 1 of them, you know, it's really challenging in,
Right.
in how this gets delivered. Potentially. Or, you know, if we've only got K schools, you don't really need them there. So are we prescribing that and saying, I want them in the 1 to 3 building? I want them in, or is, it,
Well, yeah, because if we as a body say pre-K is the number one priority next week, I'm just making a scenario up in my head. Yeah, do you end up essentially telling you that G is the option you're going with? Because that's the one that seems to me, right, just from looking at this, it screams that you have space, which is the one where the 3 schools become K centers. And I'm not interested in putting my thumb on the scale to that level with you. So yeah, that's that's a consideration as well.
It's also a good point in that not all classrooms are equal, right? So your required square footage for a pre-K classroom is different for a kindergarten classroom, different for a 5th grade classroom. So to my earlier ask of like, just tell me how many classrooms you want. You gotta also tell us what kind of classroom you want.
Exactly.
Yeah, because a pre-K isn't, not gonna flex that space at 560 to be a 1st grade class or a kindergarten class or whatever, if we need it.
Yeah.
You can space that up. You can't flex a 3rd grade class down,
Correct.
right?
So we wouldn't be able to flex because it's 560 square feet.
But that's not the entire room. That is
Right.
open
Open
space,
space.
right? So we can come back to you with probably more specifics in terms of like, so what does that mean for the overall size of the classroom per se, right?
Yeah.
Because pre-K is also the only grade that the number is mandated. Like you cannot exceed 16, you must have 2 staff.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
And so we can't decide locally, well, we think our pre-K, we're gonna do 20. 20 is a good number and we can do 2 teachers with 20. Or we think 14 is a good number and we're just gonna do 1 teacher. We're gonna ignore the ed tech, right? Like it is the most restrictive in terms of regulations. So we just have to continue to have our eye on that, because I think as it relates to K-12, right? The space things are suggestions, not requirements at K-12. Class size is locally determined, not set by the state, right? And so this is a little bit of a different beast.
Yeah.
And we just have to recognize that upfront as we plan.
Okay.
Are those requirements only if it's a new build? Because if you're renovating a current building or I have an empty classroom, let's put pre-K in there. I'm not changing anything about that room to bring pre-K in, I'm using existing space. So I don't know whether that makes a difference too, because once you build the building, you can move a 1st grade and a 3rd grade classroom, right? You can make something a kindergarten classroom, even if it's not to the state guidelines. But when you bring pre-K in, all those other districts that are using their own schools, they have not renovated every single classroom to have 335 square miles per child. 35 square feet per child. Yeah.
Square miles.
Football field per
Yeah,
child.
yeah. So, it's like, that can make a difference in your scenarios as well, because renovation versus new build are gonna have different code requirements or different.
Having supported pre-K classrooms that were brought into school buildings in which we did not renovate, I can say that the only 2 factors I believe we ran into, and there could be more to this than I remember, is the furnishings, right? That was still part of the regulations, and then
The toilet.
yeah, the bathroom, the toilet, the reaching the sinks, the stalls, those kinds of things. And then also there is the fire code regulation. So they, if you have a multi-story building, in one building I did work in, they have to be housed on the first floor alongside kindergarten. So that's a fact. Kindergarten needs to be housed on the first floor. They can't be on the second. And so that still plays in, but the actual renovation of the space, it was the same size space as our other.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be that far off.
Right.
Yeah.
Sharon, I'm sorry, since you invited me to the table, I'm gonna take advantage. I can't stay for public comment, but if you could, for our next meeting, if we could talk about the mandate or the lack thereof Because there is certainly a misconception within our group
Mhm.
that whether or not there is a state mandate, what I've read, I thought that it sounded like a mandate was coming. Heard tonight that that's not the case. I think, Diane, if you can help me do some homework on that, and clarify that, that was gonna be my question.
Yep.
At public comment, but thank you.
Yeah, it's good if there's some confusion, let's clear it
Yeah.
up with, among the committee members for sure. Okay, so we probably, I know we are expecting a crowd for the meeting, and so I know we need to clean this up and get ready, so I'm probably gonna wrap up, so, what? Oh, Leroy, can we get to you right afterward, or do you have something to say really quick?
I was just gonna jump on Charlie's comments there that it would behoove us as a school board to give us what you want us to convey out there, because we're talking about future expansion and people are asking questions about pre-K. Okay? So to Alyssa's point, we've got to be really precise as to how we're giving this out to the community, especially if we're adding things in when we're trying to go with scope right now, taking things out. So we start adding more things in, we've got to be able to communicate that to the community.
And I stressed during one of our meetings that I am very anxious about selling, like the wording, future expansion being pre-K. Because if people sign on to this building project and say, you know, the strong thing driving me forward was a pre-K program, and then it takes 10 years to get fully up and running.
Yeah.
That's our feet to the fire that said, you got me to agree by saying pre-K. And then you didn't give it to me. And so I'm very uncomfortable labeling things as this is a pre-K classroom or without having a very, very, very intentional plan.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a done plan in 2 years, but I do not want to feel as though we've misled the public if there is not a strong appetite for this and a place and a true belief in the budget that it can pass and all of the et cetera.
Yeah, it's a whole package for
Yeah.
sure. Well, I don't know if that was super helpful for you, at least it gives you some idea of what we're thinking, and then maybe next week, well, not maybe, next week, when we pick this up again. I think this will be top of mind. I definitely think the gym needs consideration at all of the schools. I mean, that to me is like almost a non-starter.
Does the CAF carry the same impact?
They only have one.
Yeah, there's.
It's a cafeteria.
But if you had two separate, could you have more students in after school and before school care?
I probably.
Well, that depends on community services and their ability to staff.
Yeah.
And if they could have
If
staff
we're in the
separated in two
Rainbows
spots.
and unicorn time and you had two things, could you do it? If you had staff, everything, like, would that be
It makes sense
acceptable?
that you could, yeah.
Okay.
Although if they did have to separate the staff, we'd have to consider where would the other portion of children go?
Right.
Unless our gym was expanded. If our library is too small to really be helpful.
I'm sorry, what do you mean, we should separate them?
Like if we expanded the number of students that
Oh.
we
Right.
were servicing before and after.
But a separate cafeteria space would count as acceptable space for before and after school care.
Sure would.
So I would take that back. too.
Right, but whereas we don't provide that ourselves.
Right.
We can't
We can't-
speak on
we
behalf
can't
of an
force them,
outside
right.
entity.
We don't know what they're.
I really do hope that this at least laid some kind of foundational groundwork and understanding.
All right, are there any other thoughts or questions before we wrap up?
Yeah.
Okay, so if there are no objections, we will adjourn at 6:58. Thank you so much. Thank you. That was wonderful
you very much.
presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good evening and welcome to the Thursday, February 27th, 2025 Scarborough Board of Education business meeting. Ray, can you call the attendance, please?
Yes, Mr. Kelleher,
Here.
Ms. Leon,
Here.
Ms. Lindstrom,
Here.
Ms. Peterson,
Here.
Mr. Rockenstein,
Here.
Ms. Trapinian,
She will be late.
Ms. Trapini Huff,
Here.
Ms. Ledger.
Here.
Ms. Roskina.
Here.
Perfect, thank you so much. Would everyone please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you so much. All right, agenda item 4.0 is approval of the February 6th, 2025 business meeting and February 12th, 2025 executive session meeting minutes. If there are no objections, we'll approve those. All right. Agenda item 5.0 are adjustments to the agenda. I do have a request from Freyla, who had a work event to attend tonight. And so what she requested for consideration of the board is that we move the continuing business, the second reading of policy JFCK. If we make that 9.0 and replace, essentially flip the new business and the continuing business. The rationale is because she is part of the policy committee that has worked on the policy. She would like to be here for the discussion of that policy. So do I have a motion to amend as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I think she's put a lot of really hard work into this, and I think that time and effort should be respected.
Great. All in favor? Okay, that is unanimous. Thank you. I'll just grab it. Okay. Agenda item 6.0 are the Spotlight Award recognitions. 6.1 is the Staff Spotlight Award recognition. So for this, we'll turn it to Jillian.
Right, I think actually the first one up will be, Jenna will be doing.
I will do the first one. So we're actually recognizing two staff spotlights tonight. So we'll wait for that to pull up in a second.
Yeah,
But we had one for January and we were going to present in February, early February for that one. But then due to the snowstorm, we decided to push it back to tonight. So now we're going to present two, and then later on, we're going to be presenting student ones too. So I'm very excited. So the January Spotlight Award winner is Adriano Mann. So Adriano was nominated for his exceptional work for being inspirational and an absolute ray of sunshine. He was noteworthy for his most positive attitude and contagious kindness. And then in the next couple of slides, we're going to find out who nominated Adriano. Apparently those are Adriano's office angels, as they call it. Yeah. Then this team put up a beautiful slide, and I don't know if Kelly, if you wanted to come up to read this.
Hi, I'm Kelly Crosby. I'm the principal at Wentworth School, and we are so fortunate to have Adriano support our school. He is a bus driver, but between his morning bus run and his afternoon bus run, he comes to Wentworth and supports all 4 lunches. This man goes above and beyond the call of duty. He will do anything, as you can see in the photos. He takes out the trash, he washes the trays, he puts things through the dishwasher. But I think what's most special and important about what he does is he really notices and he takes care of our kids and he spreads joy wherever he goes, not just with our students. He might notice if somebody's a little bit sad or maybe not sitting with their typical buddies. He has a little pocket full of stickers and he's always just spreading little kindness stickers around. But he also spreads a lot of joy to our office team. He comes through and you'll see in the next video every day the same response. Adriano, how are you today? And you'll see what his response is every single time. Adriano comes to our school every day, does all 4 lunches in the middle of his morning and afternoon bus runs, and he does nothing but spread joy.
He is so kind to the kids and loves our office staff.
His positivity is infectious, and I don't know what we do without him every day.
He's fabulous.
He always answers marvelous when I ask him how he is, and he brings us treats.
He's the smile of the day.
Adriano is, what will we say about him on 3?
Marvelous.
Marvelous. And that is genuinely what he says every single day. How are you today, Adriano? No matter what. Marvelous. He also makes an incredible tiramisu, and he is just extremely kind, and we're very, very fortunate to have him at Wentworth. So congratulations, Adriano. I think he might want to say, did you want to speak too? Okay. I'll try.
Oh, no, thank you so much. I'm very happy. And I'm very happy to work here and have this opportunity to grow in this town, in this school of district. I am honored to serve this community and the future, the students. And I'm really thankful to my trainers and supervisor. I want to share this special hour with my family, my daughter Leila and my wife Georgia, my co-worker and my friend, because the union make us stronger. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Adriano, can you actually, yep, come over here. I'm gonna take a picture of you.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
All right, thank you so much. And now we can, also, we would like to recognize our February Spotlight Award winner, and that is Mark Curtis. All right, and the people that recognize, we had 2 nominating parties. So that was Stephanie and Cheryl, and they're here too. A little animation for fun. All right, and so what they had to say, and I was going to read this, but if either one of you would love to come up and talk, I would be happy to have you as well. No, you're good? All right. Listen, I don't blame you. I'm so grateful to all of you that make these nominations, but we get to read all these wonderful things, and here's what they had to say about Mr. Tardif. He teaches 6th grade at math at the middle school. This year, he has had a variety of students with various needs, both academically and physically. He has enthusiastically started implementing universal design for learning techniques in order to, for all students to have equal access to math curriculum. He researched assistive technology tools that could help all students and introduced his class to, is it Kami? All right, I tried looking that up. an online annotation tool that allows students to write their math work with a stylus pen or type their work. He also went above and beyond to obtain styluses for all students to use with Kami. In addition, Mr. Tardif implemented an incentive program where students can earn calculator license, which sounds very exciting, by completing a set of math problems correctly. He created this program so students would have an accommodation to use their calculator to use a calculator will not stand out in his classes. Mr. Tardif took the time to educate himself on each of his students' accommodations and is always going out of his way for additional tools. He has created materials for individual students, such as enlarged multiplication charts and number lines, as well as reaching out to individual student teams to problem solve barriers to access. Lastly, Mr. Tardif connects with his students on a personal level and goes above and beyond to make sure everyone feels included and part of his community. So with that, we would love for you to come on up, and we would like to give you an award and a cup.
So thank you, Stephanie and Cheryl. Thank you to the school board for this great idea to recognize staff and with the student profile. Thank you to Dr. Neto, Mr. Grogan. This is just, it's truly an honor. I'm fortunate to have students who are wonderful human beings. They're active participants in our community, and that helps tremendously. I'm also fortunate to be surrounded at the middle school level by colleagues and administrators, Mrs. Terrell and Mr. Murphy, who are all supportive and encouraging to be my best self every day. That's truly what motivates me to do my best and try to provide a level playing field for all of my students, both academically and socially. So thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
All right, congratulations. Are there any comments? I just want to say congratulations to both of you. It's truly, this is one of our, I think everybody, all of us at one point or another have said this is one of the most favorite things we have about our meetings. And it's so great to get to hear about our people, right? Our people that make up so much, the biggest heart of our organization. And it's really wonderful to get to hear all the great things you both are doing in the district. So thank you so very much. I've never gotten to meet you before. I'm very interested in eating your tiramisu.
Yeah.
Maybe one day in the future. And then Mr. Tardif actually taught my son quite a few years ago. And to this day, you remain his most favorite teacher. And so that speaks really highly of the impact our people leave on our students as they grow. So you mentioned really talking and helping our future. That's really what you're doing. You leave impacts everywhere you both go. And so thank you so much for all that you do. All right, agenda, this is really exciting. Agenda item 6.2 is our Student Spotlight Award. This is a new addition. So we've had the staff recognition for a few years now. And both our students, Grace and Abby, I'm going to toot their horn a little bit because this is a program that started with an idea and we really handed it off to them and let them run with it. So everything you're going to see is their work without, I would say, very minimal input from the school board. They have really taken this and run with it and learned a lot of really awesome skills in the process. And so it's really exciting to get to see this come to fruition. So congratulations to the both of you as well. And I will hand it over to you.
Okay, so for February Student Spotlight Award, we actually have two winners. We have Allie Canazzi and Fiona McDougall.
So Fiona and Allie were nominated by Miss Savasnik, and actually Allie was then also nominated by Mr. McIsaac, so it's pretty cool. Well, Miss Savasnik wasn't here today, so she asked if I could share a couple words on her behalf. So she said, I'm nominating Allie and Fiona because together they took the initiative on their own to respond to a problem and propose a solution that involved working with the Wentworth School Administration, like Ms. Crosby, and teachers to deliver programming on recycling and sustainability to their students. ECOS discovered a major problem that was preventing Scarborough Public Schools recycling from being processed correctly when it arrived at EcoMaine. This experience was a learning opportunity for ECOS members and helped increase interest in becoming more aware of the waste processing in school and in their own homes. Fiona and Allie decided that they wanted to help educate more young people about the importance of recycling and sustainable waste practices. So they developed and pitched an idea for a program for Wentworth school students to increase education, awareness, and action. Yeah.
And so now we have a video that was made by Miss Armando at the high school who is the yearbook.
We've got next. We have a little line that can help you guys remember, because it's hard to remember what can go in the trash and what can go in the recycling bin. So, Allie and I made up this super cool song for you guys. And it goes to the tune of Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes. And we're gonna sing it for you. All right, do you guys want us to sing it for you? Yeah. Okay, ready? 2, 3.
Paper, plastic, cans and glass, cans and glass. Paper, plastic, cans and glass, cans and glass. Recycle them all in your class. Paper, plastic, cans and glass.
Raise your hand if you remember seeing them in the cafeteria one day. It's a vague recollection, but hopefully the conversation will jumpstart our memories here, and we can learn a little bit more about recycling.
Mr. McIsaac, if you'd like to say.
I won't speak too long, I promise. I like microphones, but I won't take up all your time tonight. So first, thank you, school board, for recognizing our students and our staff. Really important that we do that. We have two wonderful students here tonight, and I've been lucky enough to know both of them for 4 years. Fiona is one of my advisees, wonderful student. First day she came in, started talking to me, whether it was about music or sports or her experiences in the world. Just kind of like really a kind soul. Allie also is a student I've known for 4 years, mostly through tennis, but luckily I actually had her in class. You think, I'm up here talking about these students and I've only had them in one class, one student in one class, but they've done so much for our community that I feel it's important that we speak about them. Fiona, as a freshman, was focused and determined, and Allie showed the same skills and determination as they were going through. Over the years, I've seen them implement their education that they've got at Scarborough High School and throughout the Scarborough School District. whether it's when Fiona is out in foreign countries working in the medical field, she's actually speaking in a foreign language and working with them to translate some things. She wrote a great college essay on this, by the way. Yeah, it's very cool. Allie was nominated last year to be one of 15 juniors in the whole state of Maine to work with, was it Jackson Laboratories? Bigelow Laboratories to do a week-long internship, field work, like totally, really one of the highest honors that you can get as a junior in the state of Maine in science. So, you know, it's this kind of determination, this kind of respect that they have for their own education that I truly want to honor. You've seen the video, you've seen what they can do with our other students in the district. I was lucky enough to watch Allie. The first day of freshman orientation, she spoke to the whole freshman class. She ran her notes by me real quickly, and then she went up there, she did it. She even ad-libbed a little bit. It was really cool. She's a very natural teacher that way. So I was just very proud of her. These two are both, you know, I've been teaching for 25 years. Don't tell people, I know I don't look that old. But they, honestly, in 25 years, you look forward to students like this. You want students like this, and we're lucky to have students like this. You know, they're driven, they're grounded, they're intelligent, they're compassionate. You guys make Scarborough a better place. And because of that, be you, go out there, do great things. This country needs you. Thank you.
And Ms. Crosby would also like to say a few words about the impact of Fiona and Allie's presentation on her students.
Tough act to follow, Mr. McIsaac. So I really put Fiona and Allie through their paces. A lot of kids have a lot of really wonderful ideas, and they often want to work with our students, and I want to make sure that it's a really valuable experience and protect that precious time that we have. But they were persistent and emailed and set up a meeting, and from the word go, I was so blown away and impressed by not only their knowledge, but their poise and their professionalism and just how brilliant they are and confident. And so after they met with me, I had them come back and meet with our leadership team. So the lead teachers at Wentworth School to say, hey, this is their idea, hear from them. They were like, yes, let's bring them back. So they came back and presented to our entire staff after that, which is daunting. I mean, teachers are nervous to do that. And these two young ladies got up there and just knocked it out of the park. And then since then, they've come and presented to the entire third grade and the entire fourth grade with song and dance, with engagement, with a presentation customized to the age level, just unbelievable. And we've all learned a lot from them. It has changed not only how our students approach sustainability, but our staff as well. And I've just learned a lot from both of you, and you both give me a lot of hope for the future. So thank you. I'm proud to know you. And it's awesome to see this amazing full circle moment because they were Wentworthers too. And now they're coming back to share who they are today with our students. And the final step will be smaller group meetings with the fifth grade because Fiona has a fifth grade sister who's here to support her. And we need to make sure that all of our students have this amazing knowledge to move forward and do right by our world. So thank you, Fiona and Allie.
Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Is there any comment, any discussion?
Someone always cries.
I know.
It's always one or more.
Oh, goodness. I will just say that this is our first, and I can think of no better students to be our first to have this. So, I love hearing Mr. McIsaac talk. Will go down in history as my favorite graduation speech is his. And it's because he gets so, he gives such meaningful feedback, and I hope you take it in, not only what he said, but what Ms. Crosby said as well. That's a lot of meaningful feedback, right? And you are really setting the stage for those that come behind you, right? And are looking to you as role models. And so I can think of no better first for us. So congratulations and thank you both so, so much. This is really awesome. Oh, all right. We will all pull ourselves together and we will, there is no further discussion.
Wait, hold on. Can I just say,
Please.
well done to your families also, because I think they've worked very hard to also.
That is wonderful. Thank you, Jenna. All right, agenda item 7.0 is general public comment. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment about something that is not on our agenda? All right, seeing now, general public comment, we will close general public comment. Our new 8. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. Are you ready? Oh, okay. Yep, so, yeah, go ahead and give our permission. All right, Ellen, you're welcome to go ahead and talk.
Hi, I just wanted to clarify, if we have public comment on the device policy, should we wait until the end? Or should we wait until that comes up? Because you said.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. I
Absolutely.
can wait.
All right, wonderful, thank you. All right. Seeing no other hands raised, I will go ahead and close general public comment. The new 8.0 is new business. 8.1 is the Blue Point School presentation.
No worries. I mean, everyone wants to see it again. Almost there. There we go. With the springy photo of Blue Point. It's coming. We all set? All right. So hi, I'm Kelly Martin. I am the principal at Blue Point School, and I'm happy to share some highlights with you of what's happening at Blue Point. And for those of you who are at the workshop tonight, it's nice to see you again. All right, go ahead to the next. Oh, not that way. Okay. So Blue Point at a glance is 200 students, and I've listed the breakdown for you there of just how many are in kindergarten, first and second grade, just a really simple view. We have about 37 full-time staff and approximately 10 shared staff. We share specialists with other buildings, and a lot of service providers travel throughout K2 and the district. And just so everybody has a clear picture, we have 2 general ed support programs. We have academic support for first and second graders and a kindergarten early intervention program. And then we have 3 special education classrooms at Blue Point. We have a functional life skills classroom, a resource room, and what we call a social life skills classroom for more behavioral needs. So we are busy at Blue Point. I wanted to talk a little bit about the organization, just because we have some exciting things going on. At Blue Point, our teachers are working together in teams this year. Every teacher has a partner and is working in alignment in terms of their schedule and collaborating to plan for students. A lot of them are creating flexible groups, which means kind of trading students back and forth, to sharing the instructional load for students. And this is going really well, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. And that feeds into supporting students through our student support team model, which is also called MTSS. We meet weekly to talk about students of concern and to plan for those students, to create interventions, to make sure that we're meeting student needs. And the other thing we have created time for in our schedule is time for grade level teams to meet every week. So those teams of, first grade teachers, kindergarten teachers, they're meeting every week. They're really digging into student data and they're planning for instruction. And a member of each of those grade level teams, a representative, comes to our building leadership team along with some other folks. And we talk about, what's happening at the grade level, as well as just talking about what's happening in the building and how to promote and maintain a positive school culture. So just that whole organizational structure has just really come together this year with the addition of some new lead teacher positions. Thank you for supporting that. And we just have a really good groove going. So I wanted to share that as a positive. And just to add some more pieces in terms of what we're doing as a whole school. I think you heard last year we had a spotlight award in terms of our community meetings. That was an effort from some of our teachers that worked with our Mind Up curriculum to create sort of a parallel curriculum for our community meetings and classroom connections. We've continued that work through our building leadership team. So we meet monthly as a whole school to really highlight those successes and to, talk about what's expected at school, but just really to connect as a school. Kids love it. They do a great job. It's a really high energy time. I'd love to have any one of you come and join us. It's really fun. And in between those times, students pair up with other classrooms. So when we're not having a whole school meeting, they're doing classroom connections and they're meeting with another classroom. So a kindergarten classroom is connecting with a second grade classroom, and they will all throughout the year have connections with every classroom. So it just creates some really nice connections, especially for students as they think about transitioning to the next grade. They know the teachers, they know other students, and it really makes for a really nice community in the building. I talked a little bit about the team structure, but that's just something that I'm really proud of. We also have an instructional coach model that's different this year at K2. We have a full-time instructional coach in each building rather than sharing them across the K2 schools. And that has proved to be a really positive model. That just happened due to some situations with people changing roles. So she's actually a first grade teacher that was at Blue Point for a little bit. And so she kind of slid right into the role, and it has been a really wonderful addition to her supporting teachers, supporting students. And the other thing that we're really proud of is the data literacy that we're building within our teams. We just had a Blue Point Data Day with Katie and Kelsey. Katie actually did that with all 3 of our K2 schools this week, but it was just really invigorating. We met with each grade level team, and they were really able to share the positive strategies that they're using with students, celebrating those successes, and really looking at data and strategizing about how to plan forward. And it was just a really positive day and really highlighted the strengths of our students and our staff. We can move on to the next one. So what makes Blue Point great? It's always hard because we always talk as a phase and as three buildings, but what I think makes Blue Point great is the warm and welcoming atmosphere. I mean, people talk about it, that when you walk into Blue Point, there's something about it. And I think we do a lot to cultivate that in terms of just, you know, being kind, being welcoming, having kind of a customer service attitude, I guess. But I really think, you know, our staff are really great. I think we have a whole child approach. I think we really look at each child as an individual and have high expectations for kids, both academically and behaviorally. And we really work hard to support each kid in their path. And we have a strong sense of community, both the community that supports us, parents, you know, families, extended family, and then the community that we build within our building. And then I think there's a little video. And that's it.
That was very sweet. Thank you so much, Kelly. Are there any questions or comments for Kelly?
Yes. I feel like it's very loud. I absolutely cannot say enough wonderful things about Blue Point, your staff, your community, everything. I am fortunate enough to have a student at Blue Point, and I think going into the school year, I was anticipating wonderful teachers because of the reputation of Scarborough and a nice little community for her to have of her small classroom. And it is not what we've gotten. She knows second graders, first graders. When she goes onto the playground, there's, she always has this warm welcome. One day I asked her, she was drawing a picture at home and I said, "Who are you drawing it for?" I'm so excited. And I was expecting her to say her grandmother, to be honest. And she said, "Oh, for one of the lunch ladies."
Oh.
And I was like, she's taken the time to like connect with her and have that. And I just, I can't thank you and your staff enough for the community that you provide for our Scarborough students and foster and just, I can't say enough good things, but the environment that they get to go and learn. And I feel so comfortable dropping her off every day at school to be in such a lovely heart, welcoming, warming, and nurturing environment. So thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa. Any other comments? Thank you so much for both your presentations tonight. You have been in front of us a lot tonight, and I know it's a big ask on both sides. So thank you very much. This has been really great to get to know the schools a little bit closer, and
It's my pleasure.
we appreciate it so
Thank you.
much.
All right.
So thank you.
I'm done now.
All right, agenda item 8.2 is the high school program of studies. We'll bring Nate up.
Feel like I have some really hard acts to follow tonight. I have no song, no video, no nothing.
I'm just gonna stand here and talk. Try to be as entertaining as I can. So I'm here to present to you tonight the 2025-26 high school program of studies. You should have received a copy of it a little while ago, and hopefully you've had a chance to review that wonderful, I think, 128-page document. I'm sure it was riveting reading for you all. I'm just going to present to you some key kind of got to go through it section by section, but just try to present some key changes from each section. To be honest with you, most of it is staying the same. And a lot of the changes, just to give you the high level overview, are really just reflective of some changes in prerequisites based on some experiences that we've had, or changes in textbooks to reflect some curriculum implementation and things of that sort. But there are a couple of new course additions in there as well. So I'm just going to kind of run through I'm not going to go through all the specifics and everything, but just run through a couple of things. So the English department, couple of changes there around prerequisites, mostly to reflect procedure that's been in place in the department, specifically around the department approval language. That's a little bit more consistent with what that looks like on the ground level, so we went with that. And then some updates to some texts that are no longer used. The department has been diversifying its texts for the last couple of years now, and it's sort of an ongoing update in the program of studies. The math department, we added some clarifying language around students who want to accelerate their math learning or their math studies during the summer to reflect the longstanding department practice of accepting an in-person class equivalent. And then most other updates there are to texts and materials and course descriptions that just reflect curricular changes. Business section, just some really basic language changes to course descriptions that were new last year, and so we're still trying to feel that out a little bit. So pretty similar stuff there, but just a couple of minor tweaks to reflect what's happening in the classroom based on our experience this year. Science, the only update was a clarification on prerequisites for Chem 4, so that we're a little bit more clear on exactly what's required there, and then an adjustment in the course description for the Foundations of Environmental Science and Foundations of Biology courses. Those courses are really more targeting students with sort of interrupted educational backgrounds, which I think is a little bit more accurate in terms of who we're trying to capture there. Social studies, no changes. World languages, updates to required texts in French and Latin. If you recall, last year we purchased some new French curriculum, but this process is way out in front of the budget process, so we didn't get to make those changes. Latin, we're confident we'll make it through this year, so we went ahead and put those in because those are AP texts that we're talking about. In terms of visual arts, just some minor updates there. AP Studio Art was updated in terms of titling just to match the new AP course title. And then a couple of updates to yearbook and publishing course descriptions just to make sure that they better reflect what we're doing there. Fine arts music. So here's where there's a new course. As all of you know, we've kind of been rebuilding the music program, which took some heavy hits during COVID. And it's been under the new leadership of Jeff Mosier for a couple of years now. So this course kind of completes the rebuild. It gives us a learning progression in the music program that's sort of got a beginner, intermediate, and advanced level. And it really sort of puts us on the level with what a lot of other high-performing music programs and other high schools around us are doing. So we're super excited about that. In addition, we'll still carry the learning opportunities and coursework in piano and music theory. No changes to dance and theater. We're also excited to add a new course in health and PE. So health, it's often super tight in terms of scheduling for health because it's a required course and pretty much always gets taken by sophomores. But if you've ever had a student or if you've ever talked to students about it, it is a very fast-paced course because there's a lot of ground to cover in just a semester. And it has felt like for a couple of years now, I think there's students that kind of leave wishing that they got a little bit more of this or a little bit more of that. And so Ms. Record has developed what we are calling advanced topics in health. health, which will sort of be able to provide an opportunity to go into depth on some stuff that she has to shortchange a little bit in order to get through all the learning goals and standards that she's got, but also an opportunity to cover some things that might feel timely or that students have shared a real interest in. So we're super excited for that. It'll tighten up the health numbers a little bit, but fortunately we've got a fairly small sophomore class next year, so we're confident that we'll be able to squeeze it in and not give too much on the health side of stuff. Tech and engineering is another area where we're adding a new course. We've seen some exciting growth since we've launched that program. And one of the things we're noticing, which is fairly typical, is that we're getting, there's a lot of students that are interested, but the skills that they're bringing to those programs vary greatly. And so one of the things we've noticed in order to better meet the needs of all students is we feel like it'd be wise to just add a foundations in STEM there. Again, that's targeting a lot of students that might be coming with an interrupted educational background, who maybe aren't getting the most out of that level 3 introductory course experience there. So we're super excited for that. The internship section, if you notice, had a lot of red and a lot of yellow, but don't panic. We spent a lot of time sort of thinking about the place of the internship program within the Career Pathways office. If you pay close attention to it, the internship program has been offered as a 2-block course, which has its pros and cons, and the cons have started to outweigh the pros. The cons of that are it takes up a lot of room in the student's schedule, and sometimes the internships don't make for they're too far apart to have a real conversation about the work. And so one of the things that we're doing there is we're sort of shifting how we view it. Internships will still be offered, but it'll be a type of ELO as opposed to being independent of the ELO. And that's going to give Ms. Savasnik a lot more flexibility in terms of how she groups kids when she meets with them. If we've got a couple of kids who are taking some similar internships, she can cluster them together and have some conversations across those experiences. So I think it's going to really add to the enrichment that's in the learning that students are getting there. And then the last thing I wanted to note, integrated credits. So if you recall, that was a new addition last year. We've got a couple layers to integrated credits. So part of what's in that document, and I'm not sure we did a great job of highlighting it for you, but we get recommendations. We will be getting annual recommendations from both Westbrook Regional Vocational Center and Portland Arts and Technology Center, Portland Arts and Technology High School, around what credits they recommend to us for integrated credits. If you recall, integrated credits are credits that students earn at Westbrook Regional Voc or at Portland Arts and Technology High School that we then take and count as core credit back at the high school. Previously, these credits all counted as electives. Now they're counting as maybe a little bit of math or a little bit of science based on the recommendations that we get. So if you don't know much about those programs, they're fairly solid, but there is some fluidity in terms of what they look like year to year. Their curriculum changes. That sometimes impacts how they think about integrated credits or what they would recommend. Maybe instead of 0.5 science, they might say 1.0 science credit kind of deal. So we expect to hear from them pretty much every winter. So what we've got this year, we went through and cross-referenced all their recommendations with what we had and made the updates. And then there's no changes. If you recall, last year we had a couple of locally approved things like digital art and design and things of that sort, where what they were doing, what students were doing at Westbrook or at Portland really match up with the Scarborough specific curriculum. And so we awarded a few integrated credits there. There's no changes to any of that. The one thing I did want to note, because I was here last year, I had hopes that we would be able to sort of figure out how to weight these credits in a way that we felt honored what students were doing over there. And frankly, we had a really challenging time trying to disentangle it all. Students earn, depending on the program, earn as many as 4 different types of credit. They earn some integrated credit, they earn some elective credit, they might earn a concurrent enrollment credit, which is a course that it's a college course that students take at the high school. So they might be earning that credit through Pass or Vote or Westbrook Voc. And then they also have, there's some of those also count as dual enrollment. So there's just it's a real tangled web. We can handle 2 types of credits pretty well. Trying to disentangle 4 was really, really messy. And we found that it was a lot muddier than what we expected. So we spent a good deal of the fall semester with the guidance team trying to figure this out. And as we started to look at it, we got increasingly perplexed and started calling around, say, what are you doing? What are you doing? How are you handling this? And what we found is that our practice is really consistent with what other area high schools are doing. And so that kind of gave us some reassurance. Integrated credit, we're a little bit ahead on this. It doesn't have to be done or didn't have to be done until the 25-26 school year is when it's supposed to be done. And so we're a little bit ahead. And so we kind of felt like, given the complexity that was involved, we didn't want to mess anything up in terms of credits. So we felt like we might be wise to just let the dust settle on this and give it a couple of years and monitor it. But we felt like, we're on solid ground because what we're doing is really consistent with what other schools are doing. And that felt like a good place to land. I do think it's going to be a conversation that we probably come back to every now and then just to check and see if there's an opportunity here, because students, if you ever went over to Westbrook or Portland, you'll find students are doing some pretty sophisticated work over there. Certainly stuff that I don't know how to do. And it's, they're using some pretty high-end technology to do some pretty amazing things. And so we just want to make sure we're honoring that. So it's something we're going to continue to monitor, but we're pretty much going to land where we started, where we started with this last year, and just see where it lays for the next couple of years. With all that said, that's a grand tour through our program of studies. I'm happy to take any questions you might have, not do a song or dance or anything of that sort. Yeah.
Maybe
next time I'd like to make a motion to move my item first next time so that I don't have to follow those acts. It'd be a lot easier for those folks too, Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Nate. Are there any questions for Mr. Terrio? All right. Do I have a motion to approve the high school program of studies as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Do we have any discussion? Is there anyone wishing to make public comment this evening about the high school program of studies? Can you check out for me? All right, seeing none. For a second, all in favor? And that shows as unanimous. Thank you so much. Agenda item 8.3 is the first reading of the 2025-2026 school calendar. So Diane, you and I could probably tee this up if you want to get started.
Sure. Yeah. Hang on. Should have been my own MacBook right now, yours. That'd be great. So we are pleased to bring forward the calendar to you this evening. Per policy, we did bring the draft of the calendar to the last policy committee meeting for policy committee members to weigh in on. If you take a look at the draft in front of you, you'll see that it is pretty standard in terms of the look of it as compared to the most recent years. So one early release day, a month built into the calendar, 2 professional development days at the start of the year, 2 student days prior to Labor Day with the built-in appointments for K-5. We've heard a lot of really positive feedback from families and from staff about that being a successful start for our students. The one piece that I would call your attention to is in regard to the ending date of the school year. In the last 2 calendars, I believe the board has approved a calendar that has a mix of traditional snow days and remote learning days. To date, we have only experienced 1 of those remote learning days ever. Let's knock on some wood, because any other storm days we get this year will be those. But in the past 2 years, the number of traditional versus remote storm days
has really been based on your desire as a board to have a set end date for the year. And so if you take a look at the suggested calendar for this year, our suggested end date would put us at June 17th, which provides us 3 traditional snow days. And then anything subsequent in terms of snow days, there would be remote learning days.
All right, thank you so much. Are there any questions for Diane?
This feels like a silly question, but if we only use one snow day, we would move that 17th to the 15th or however unused.
Yes.
Yeah, it might be easier to think about it from the 12th. The 12th is the last day if no days are used. So if there's no snow days, so then it just add on from there. And then if you get to the 17th, that's when we would switch to. If you get to 3 days, that's when we would switch to remote homework. Yeah. I know we had a question earlier, Dana, and I don't know if you could explain this, why the number of student days is 1 greater than what's required.
So I think Scarborough has just had a longstanding tradition of going more than the required amount of days. In fact, when I came to the district in 2018 as principal at the time, the school calendar for students was 177 days. Since that time, probably, I would say, at least 3 years ago, when it was determined that there was a need for additional professional development days. The determination was made to trade in one of those student days for another staff day at no extra cost. Because as you can imagine, from a contractual standpoint, to add any additional time, whether that be a student day or a staff-only day, costs upwards of $300,000 per day. And so at that time, it was determined that the most fiscally responsible thing to do would be to drop us back to 176, because we would still be meeting or exceeding the state required days.
Thank you. All right, are there any further questions? All right, do I have a motion to approve the first reading of the 2025-2026 school calendar as presented?
Second.
Any discussion? Is there anybody wishing to make public comment this evening? All right, seeing none, all in favor? And that shows unanimous. Thank you so much. Agenda item 8.4 is appointments. 8.4.1 is the middle school wrestling coach.
Yes, so you see in your packet a nomination for a middle school wrestling coach, and the request would be to approve that nomination.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the middle school wrestling coach as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? And that shows unanimous. Thank you so much. All right, our new item 9.0 is continuing business. 9.1 is the second reading of policy JFCK, student use of privately owned electronic devices at schools. So I'm going to tee this up in place of Freyla with Jillian's help. So Jillian, you chime in here anytime. Just to give you some background as to what we did, because this does, the second draft does look what I might classify as significantly different from the first draft. Essentially what the policy committee did was go through the first draft with your comments from first reading, trying to take into account the concerns that you had. What we ended up doing was maintaining the grade K through 8 would turn off and store their devices during school hours. So that still is a bell-to-bell ban, the K to 8 level. Where there are some changes is at the high school level. So if you look in the draft policy, or as you've seen, as you've looked at it already, I'm sure, the maintaining no devices during academic time is still included. That does still include advisory, study halls, assemblies, and library time. Students are required to place cell phones in a designated location upon entering an academic area. So that would be teacher designated area in the classroom or academic area. They may not take their, students may not take their cell phones with them when they request to leave class. So there is talk about what happens when they need to go to the bathroom and are they on their phones in the bathroom? So that would take care of that. Their watches, smartwatches could only be used in airplane mode, which would prevent them from texting, receiving alerts or notifications and whatnot on their smartwatch. They may use their cell phones during lunch. So this is a change from the first draft. We did add that back in. So it's during lunch, passing time between classes and before and after school. Care must be taken that they use such devices in a manner that does not interrupt the activities of others. And then they may use their cell phone if a staff member gives students specific permission to use their device for a clear educational purpose. So that gives back that teacher discretion that we did hear from staff members that they really wanted. But we also heard the concern that from parents in particular, that we didn't, that students shouldn't just be using them in the class just because there's extra time, like free time at the end of I have 5 minutes at the end of math, go ahead and get on your phone and start looking. So we're preventing that, but we are giving back the teacher discretion. I think everything else is, I'm sorry, we did add number 4. Oh yeah, I'll come back up to that. We did add number 4, which was specific circumstances such as an IEP or individual health plan arise. A personal plan may be developed and implemented with administration, appropriate staff and family. So that was to speak to the concern about health, people who use devices for health and IEP reasons. And then we did at the top, we did add in a paragraph about what privately owned devices cover, because we did have some concern from parents and students and teachers that we heard as it related to computer use and calculators, and does a personal device include those items? So we did try to define that a little bit more. So it now says privately owned electronic devices covered by the following provisions include cell phones, smartphones, smartwatches, electronic toys, and electronic games. Other privately owned electronic devices, including calculators, laptops, e-readers, and tablets used for approved educational purposes, are permissible. Okay, so is there any questions on the updates? Yeah, I'll take that in just a second. Any questions yet? Yeah. For discussion?
I have a question about the way where it says may not use privately owned electronic devices during academic time, blah, blah, blah. And then all the other things, and then it says may use their cell phone if a staff member gives a student specific permission, yada, yada, yada. I don't know, I was just looking at it and thinking, I'm like, should they, I thought that if somebody's looking at the policy and they just see the top one and then they're like, oh, and they don't go any further. I don't know if you could combine them or at least put one after the other, just so that they were close together. So okay, this addresses that. And then right after it, it says you can't use it anytime unless it's authorized by a staff member, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, are you suggesting potentially, are you asking if we could make that sentence a standalone? Like,
Or just either put the two together or make them one. You can't use them at all unless it's
oh, I
by
see
a,
what you're saying. You're saying combine number 1 and number, what is that?
or put them one after the other, so that not one at the top and one at the bottom.
Okay, so what
Just so
we'll
that
do-
it's.
Yeah, I
you know
hear
what
what
I'm
you're
saying?
saying now. Yeah.
It's just I look at it and I'm like, it doesn't seem that it flows well that way, and somebody looking at it might not go all the way down and see that. If, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I totally know what you're saying. What I'm gonna do though is, I'm gonna put a pin in that until we get to our part of discussion, because you make an amendment. So, hang on to that. Oh, yeah, you could do that. You can offer it up as an amendment, sure. Or we could discuss it, and if you feel like you want to, absolutely. Absolutely. Frayla, good timing. We've only just made it to, I covered the changes in the draft policy and just taking questions. Okay, any other questions about the?
Could I just raise a question that was brought forward to me?
Yes.
And that is clarification in regards to high school students' use of cell phones during things like after-school activities. So for example, a sporting event, an activity where they might be taking pictures with others. Because again, that has been brought forward as a concern in terms of how to monitor that in a larger venue. So if you're at a school-sponsored activity, a Friday night football game, how would it be reasonable for our high school administrators to go around and monitor student cell phone use?
At least for the K-8, the wording says during school hours. I don't know if that's a possibility to tie that down to some of the high school area. In one, it ends with locations during school hours. I don't know if that's something we can tie down for clarity purposes into the high school area.
Thought we had hang on just one second, let me just read it. Yeah, so in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th bullet, may use their cell phones during lunch, passing time between classes and before and after school. So, perhaps during our discussion time, if that doesn't feel clear, perhaps we need to add another bullet that makes it a little clearer. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Or maybe focus on when they can't versus instead of when they can, because if we focus on when they can't or when they can't, we can clearly define when phones are not allowed versus when they can. Someone may think of it as I don't want to say overreaching policy, but something that can lead to those external events or something further out from school.
I think if Diane already has an ask for clarification from the people that we expect to maintain it, then further clarity would, yeah. I don't think it can, if it's already being questioned of how to enforce them.
Okay. Okay, so what we will do is put a pin in that one as well for our discussion. So if you want to all think about language, that would be fantastic. Okay, any other questions? All right, is there any public comment? If you are online and wishing to make public comment, if you could raise your hand in the Zoom, to the bottom of your Zoom screen. And then we will kind of bounce between. Right now I'm seeing one online, so we'll go ahead and start there. Is that feel good? Okay, go, we can give her permission. Yeah. All right, Ellen, you have permission to talk. So the rules online are the same, where you have 3 minutes to provide comment. It's a little bit difficult because you're online, but what I'll do is when the red light starts blinking up here, I'll just let you know that your 3 minutes is up, if that's okay.
Great.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to start by expressing my deep appreciation for the board and all the work you've done. I know you have a lot of other projects you're balancing, and this is a volunteer role. So with that in mind, I think we have an opportunity to take a more comprehensive and collaborative approach to reviewing this device policy. Some key pieces of information have been overlooked in these discussions, such as research on addiction and the brain's need for breaks during the school day, as well as the importance of a truly restful lunch period where students can engage face-to-face. Further, the teacher narratives seem to be primarily a response to the initial draft, which included a phone-free lunch and challenges with enforcement, which I understand. And the SEL data was from the last couple of years. Looking at data from back to 2010, 2011, 2012, before devices became ingrained in our kids' lives, might paint a different picture. With the current policy update, I would guess that teachers would find the enforcement of smartwatches in airplane mode also to be challenging. To ensure we're making the most informed and thoughtful decisions, I propose the creation of an ad hoc committee dedicated to reviewing the device policy. This committee would bring together school leadership, board members, parents, and teachers to examine the data and research collectively, ensuring that no key perspectives and evidence are overlooked. This group could meet once a month over the next school year and would provide a structured and in-depth review, allowing the policy committee to focus on its broader responsibilities while still addressing this important issue. Without a dedicated work group, we risk stretching these discussions over several years within policy committee meetings, while other pressing policies may also require attention. Instead, I believe a structured, focused approach someone's calling me. A structured, focused approach would allow for a more efficient and responsible use of our time. The U.S. Surgeon General warned the cost of inaction is too high. The mental health crisis among young people is an emergency, and the cost of not acting could be measured in lost lives. He has called for phone-free schools as part of the solution. Given this urgent concern, how can we not take a deeper, more collaborative approach? I understand there will be pain points and necessary exemptions, but the right decision is not always the easiest one. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ellen. All right. All right. Is there anyone else wishing to make public comment this evening? Yeah, come on up. If you wouldn't mind just sharing your name with us first.
Amy Salerno.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then same thing, you'll see the lights though. All right, go ahead.
I will start first with a message from the students who could not be here tonight. They thank the board for their time and their careful consideration of all members of the community. This new policy represents a careful compromise between varying opinions. The board has crafted a fair and effective solution that addresses multiple needs. They appreciate the board's recognition for the utmost necessity of clear and precise language when a government entity seeks to implement a ban on something that was previously permitted. They also commend the board for recognizing the multiple practical, real life, and academic uses of these devices as shared by the students and teachers who use them. They are encouraged to see that their voices have been heard and valued by the board in this process. Additionally, they are grateful that the board is considering the financial implications of this policy. This thoughtful approach demonstrates a recognition of the practical realities that come with implementing change in a responsible and fiscally sound manner. They support the passing of the current draft of JFCK. Now, myself, I understand that the people supporting the bell-to-bell ban have strong beliefs and values that they are committed to upholding, and no one is denying that social media can be detrimental or addictive. However, their disregard of the high school teachers' survey documents, the overall high GPA at the high school, impacts on students with IEPs and private health issues, budget and potential staffing impacts, the board's own visits to the lunch and seeing that kids are talking to each other, and additionally, the voices and needs of our young adults. It reflects a kind of single-minded thinking that we often see these days, where diverse perspectives and practical concerns are overlooked in favor of a narrow agenda. I urge the bell-to-bell ban folks to take a moment to reflect on the many valid reasons why their demands are not practical at the high school level and to consider the value of compromise. The reality is that navigating any complex issue requires compromise, especially when practical obstacles arise. It is also crucial to listen to what our high school students are telling you. I can assure you that these students, soon to be adults, are not to be underestimated. They are actively shaping their futures, and they have valuable insights that we as adults need to hear. They deserve to feel heard, respected, and valued, especially when they are engaged in discussions that directly affect their education and well-being. By disregarding their voices, it also sends a troubling message to our young people. It shows them that their perspectives are inconsequential and that compromise is not something to strive for. As parents and community members, we must show our kids that it's possible to have differing opinions and needs within a community and still work together toward a fair and respectful solution. Otherwise, we risk maintaining the current environment where constructive dialogue is replaced by division. At the end of the day, we all want what is best for our community and our kids, but we have to remember that true progress comes when we are able to work together, acknowledging and respecting both our needs and the needs of others, even when we disagree.
Thank you. All right, is there anybody else wishing to make public comment this evening? All right, seeing none, we will close public comment. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the second reading of policy JFCK, student use of privately owned electronic devices at school as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Are you gonna bring up the discussion points we already started, or should we wait for that?
well,
Discussion first?
We can discuss the questions that have already been brought up or questions you, or thoughts you have, whichever. How would you like to start?
Oh, well, your chair.
Well, you turned your microphone on first, so what would you like to ask first?
No, I just thought it would be good to address the concerns that have been risen to Diane in the wording.
Sure. So the after-school events.
Yes, please.
Freyla, just to be sure, I can't recall if you were in the room, we discussed that.
But session's point, I was just, point where you just restate sort of what the question was, or what the issues that you're not giving.
Yeah, so the question that had been brought forward to me from high school administration, just as a point of clarity, was it didn't seem to be made clear in the policy in regards to after-school activities and student cell phone use. So for example, let's say there is a school activity, a football game on a Friday night, and we have a large crowd assembled there of students. What is the expectation in terms of students' use of their devices there, and how practical would it be to request administration to oversee that? I understand what the intent of the policy committee was, having attended the meetings, but I think the question being brought forward by others that are reading this is that it may not be as clear as the intention.
So if you look at what I was saying, Freyla, is if you look at the fifth bullet under high school, the fifth bullet says high school students may use their cell phones during lunch, passing time between classes, and before and after school. So, we had to me, it seemed clear, but what Alyssa was saying is if we're getting questions from administration already, we might need to add another.
Well, I think maybe wording wise, can we just remove before and after school? Because I feel like if it's not during school, then it doesn't necessarily apply there.
I feel like the before and after school being there is the only thing that sort of kind of indicates after school is fine. I was gonna say if we're able to kind of use the same wording from bullet 1 in our point 1, and say like high school students during school hours, and just have it very prescriptive, just kind of tie that wording from above.
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
I second
yeah. It might be more, so we have that fifth bullet, the one that says that they can use it before and after school. But then if you go down to number 1, the use of privately owned electronic cameras and or the camera, video, sound recording functions of any privately owned electronic device is strictly prohibited in certain areas of Scarborough Public Schools, including the cafeteria, locker rooms, restrooms, and buses. In other school locations, students are required to obtain permission before photographing, taking videos, or recording any individual.
Right.
So that's the area of
That's the
concern.
example, right? Because if we are on an athletic field and someone's wanting to capture a picture of a sibling even,
Right.
right? A friend,
Yeah.
themselves enjoying the activity.
it'd be hard to monitor that just because you also have visiting guests as well.
Right.
And this would not apply to them.
Yes. Does it make sense to say in other school building? No, because you still have the arena, the basketball courts.
Is it possible to just add language about the same thing during school hours? Because I think if we
Yeah.
start naming places, what happens if we suddenly have hockey games somewhere else or have a basketball game somewhere
Mhm.
else?
Yeah, is it really in other school locations during the school day is what you're suggesting? Are you raising your hand?
Well, I was trying to see if I can, I mean, I think we need to tie it in where we're saying that you can't do it in certain situations because what do we, I know, where did I read it? I'm looking through here, I'm trying to find it. So it says in other school locations, students are required to obtain permission before photographing. So would that mean that if they want to take a picture of the basketball game, the track meet, the hockey game, or a video, that they have to, I mean, you can't get permission from somebody that's on the field and you don't know if you're going to, you know, if you're there trying to catch somebody getting a touchdown, you're gonna get everybody, you know, in the picture, or video. But we do talk about how you're not allowed to use it for, where misconduct, you know, anything that, I mean, and I think there's a way we could put it, to word it, where you can take video of a sporting event or a picture of, you know, whatever, and still let people know that you can do it, but you can't necessarily do anything that would go against the policy, anything negative, anything, you know, you couldn't do it to bully somebody, you couldn't do it to, when there's just, I mean, that's a tough one. I don't even know if I'm making any sense, but
It's interesting because we pulled this language from the old policy. So that's what's interesting about this is that it's a. How has it been managed before?
I think the question is coming up because there's an assumption that there's going to be a lot of attention given to people reading this and making sure. Again, I have our high school administrators here this evening, and so,
Yeah.
you know, I don't need to be their mouthpiece. They can
Yeah, can you
certainly
come up
also
here?
speak for
Would you mind?
themselves.
Do you have a video now?
I guess I would start by asking, does anybody have a copy of the policy that I could look at? That'd be helpful.
Oh, Ray's got it for you.
Yeah, so I think some of, and I run the risk here of speaking for Mr. Legage, but feel free to jump in, Mr. Legage, if I misspeak. I think our question is, certainly some of that before and after school language is a little bit weird to us, at least me personally, because we don't have a lot of rules that apply to before and after school. So I'm a little unclear as to, in terms of like what we mean by those hours. Are we talking 7:55? Are we, that's a little bit weird for school rule, for us to be legislating school rules that apply to before and after school. I might suggest thinking about, if we're talking about during after school activities, I might suggest considering language like when you're participating in after school activities, because I certainly think that's an area where school rules absolutely apply. Spectating can be a little bit of a different thing. If we've got, conservatively probably got 2,000, 3,000, maybe 4,000 people at a big football game, it's not really realistic for us to be looking at the 500 kids that are packed in behind us, and monitoring cell phone use and figuring out who asked permission and who didn't. And it feels a little bit, I think to me anyways, that the way the policy is reading, students are required in other school locations. I'm looking at the bottom part of page 1 of the draft policy, and then the top part of page 2. You know, and I think the number 1 is certainly clear in that first few lines, but then in other school locations, students are required to obtain permission before photographing, taking videos, or recording of any individual, and then again before posting. I'm just not sure how we would manage that, if that's, and again, it may be a case where the language doesn't reflect the intention, but I'm not sure how we would manage that as it's written, because it feels like, to me anyways, that we're being asked to be very carefully monitoring 500 students and 500 phones at a football game, and somehow tracking who's taken pictures, who hasn't taken pictures, who's asked permission, who hasn't, who's posted, who hasn't. And I just not sure, even if we had 150 high school staff there, if we'd be able to manage that, much less just the 4 or so administrators that are there on a Friday night trying to manage that huge crowd. You know, and it certainly is a little bit unique venue to venue for some of these after school events, you know, because we have basketball games are in alumni gym, but then hockey presents other challenges. So I'm not sure if I could tell you exactly, you know, what the right course of action is, or what the right language is. But I know we would have concerns if the expectation is that students who are spectating at these games we're somehow having to account for all of these phones, and who's taking pictures and who's not, and who's posting and who's not. There's just no way for us to do that. It's just not possible.
Yeah.
And then you look at the number of parents that are probably there doing what we're telling the kids not to do.
Right, and we're talking about a third, right? Because the rule would apply to the kids, it wouldn't apply to parents, probably wouldn't apply to other kids that are there from other schools. Yeah, so it's just a little bit tricky. I don't know how to distinguish, you know, what the roles that people are there. I mean, kids at the game, the rules are there, but they're also paying customers for too. So I think finding out how to clarify some of that would certainly be helpful to us.
Yeah, I think, I remember our conversation, the 3 of us in policy, around this, and, I certainly can speak to my intent and then what we discussed. But to me, the before and after school are the kids that get there early and sit in the cafeteria. They would, by this rule, have permission to use the phone. The number 1, the language that is now troublesome with the rest of the policy, did carry over. But that discussion between the 3 of us was very clearly like, we don't want kids going to parts of the school and photographing other kids without their permission, right? We had a discussion around restroom photos and selfies, and yes, restrooms are spelled out here, but we also had a discussion about locker rooms and, you know, all of the hidden areas. But I wonder if this is solved by, you use the word spectating. I wonder if this is solved by a last sentence on this. This does not include spectating at school events.
What if we use the verbiage, oops, sorry, were you done?
Yeah, I'm done.
During school hours and participating in school sanctioned events? So that would help cover like dances or things like that as well.
I think we need to explicitly say to exclude these public spectator events, but also say like the bullying policies still apply.
Right.
Basically what you were saying before, but we need to explicitly spell that we cannot police this in a public
No,
event.
that's definitely not the intent.
Can I have a point of clarification or a point of information, whichever point I need? When our students are playing on a soccer team, basketball team, football team, et cetera, are the coaches expected to uphold the rules like a teacher would?
Yeah, Mr. Legage, would you mind coming up and answering that for us?
I think they're expected to uphold any policies that we have.
Any more questions for my colleagues up here? Don't go far.
I guess I'm not sure if like we heard a little bit about some of the complications of, you know, for administrators staring at 500 students mixed in a crowd of 4,000. Or is there anything that you've kind of, in reviewing this, kind of flagged as something that could be troublesome to the coaches in reinforcement? I imagine you don't have many coaches for a large football team.
I don't think, I think the same rings true for spectators as it does for students that participate. In most cases, a student that's playing on a football team is not going to have their camera with them taking pictures during the game. Or a kid participating on math team is not going to have their camera with them while they're performing their competition for the math team, or going to be up on stage with their camera during Oak Hill players taking pictures. But from time to time, students that participate will also take pictures of each other, and parents give permission for that when they sign up in Family ID. Family ID, one of the sign-offs is that they're giving permission to use their child's name, image, and likeness for promotional purposes.
So number 2 does also speak to bullying. Vulgar, abusive, obscene, discriminatory, harassing, bullying, and or illegal. So again, I go back to, do we just need to add a sentence at the end of number 1? What are you thinking?
So I think we're getting too much in the weeds, quite honestly, because like spectating is a spectrum. Are you, if you're inside of the field on a sports team, as part of the team on a bench taking photos, is that spectating? If you're in uniform, is it not? Like we're like, this policy is, this is too in the weeds. So I think we need to pull back. So what was the intent of that provision, which is that you can take photos, but you're not supposed to take photos of individuals, like specifically without their permission, essentially to harass them, or otherwise bully them or misuse your phone to torment another student. So, but we also want to be students to be able to use their phones to take photos of science experiments, and maybe a person who is running that experiment is going to be in that photo. And you may not ask explicitly that to that student, are you okay if I'm taking your photo? If your photo's out and you're filming the thing and they're standing in the photo, they're giving permission to be photographed. I mean, they're not stupid. They know what's going on. So I think we should just strike it.
Strike the whole
Strike the whole
paragraph.
sentence, not the whole paragraph.
Well, that part of
The sentence that says, another school location, students are required to obtain permission before photographing, taking videos, recording individual. I think we should keep in the posting part. So I don't believe that any administrator is going to be expected to run around and monitor people's social media use when they're uploading stuff to whatever the social media platform of their choice is. But I think if a complaint is made that a student has been recorded and this information has been uploaded, that the school should be able to take action. So this is not going to be actively monitored. There's no one running around in field stands making sure that someone's not on fill in the blank social media platform. But I think there should be ability to point to the policy to say, this is not appropriate. And if somebody makes a legitimate complaint, like this person uploaded my likeness in this way, it should be a violation of our policy, because we don't want students doing that. We want students asking for permission, or the circumstances around which these photographs are being made to be intuitively consented to.
Which I think is great. I agree.
Yeah.
Zero bullying. Would love that. But is that issue already addressed in our bullying policy? And now we're creating almost two things working in tandem when we have a policy that addresses this.
Yes, but I think we need to be specific in this policy. Bullying is covered in another policy. This is a very specific behavior that's related to privately used devices. So I think we need to make sure people are, there's no policy that says you have to get permission before uploading someone else's likeness into the internet. It says you can't harass and bully, and it explains what that might be. So I think we do need to specify. I think if somebody takes a video of a student on school property that's inappropriate or is being used inappropriately to otherwise harm that individual, that it should be a violation of school policy. And I think we need to be, I don't want to have an argument about whether this video counts as bullying or not, because if it's, is it not bad enough? You know, what if it's somebody eating food? That can be extremely abusive, or it can be completely innocuous, depending on a whole lot of circumstances around it. But somebody eating food at a table can be seen given the context vastly differently. And that, I mean, that, there's a million other things that are behind that. So we have to be sensitive. So yes, I think it's covered in bullying. I don't want to have a fight I don't want it to be unclear that this is prohibited. Uploading a video or likeness of somebody onto the internet where it lives forever. We need to have a violation of the policy. Do we need to have staff monitoring when videos are being taken? No, that seems excessive. I understand that. I agree with that. I think we should be able, and I think we should strengthen it and reiterate that using your device, your electronic, I think the same language, using privately owned electronic cameras and or the camera video, sound recording functions on any privately owned electronics device to harass another individual is strictly prohibited. I think we need to strengthen this type of bullying. I don't think we should leave it to determine what bullying means. I think with electronic devices, because we're being more prescriptive with them, we should be more prescriptive with them and say, this is not acceptable behavior. Again, administrators are not going to be lurking on the internet monitoring uploads to social media. But I think if a student comes with a valid complaint, there shouldn't be a discussion about whether this video is technically bullying or not.
Isn't that also number 2 though?
I mean, I think we need to I would strengthen it. I would say we should strengthen it because number 2 is open to interpretation.
Okay, so, hold on, I'm trying to, okay. So for number 1, I just want to be clear on what I think I hear you saying. So number 1 says the use of, so the first sentence I think I heard you say we're good with, the use of privately owned electronic cameras and or the camera all the way down to including the cafeteria, locker rooms, restrooms, and buses, period. That first part you would like to keep. Am I hearing you strike the in school locations down to social media or elsewhere? Because that gets us out of the school activities.
No.
Okay,
think
so then how do you account for the school activities? in
I would
this?
strike the first sentence and then
Mhm.
say students are required to obtain prior permission before posting any videos or sound recordings or photos of individuals taken at school or during school activities on social media or elsewhere. That says you can take the videos, but you cannot post them to social media without prior consent. And I think we should keep that.
In order to strengthen, do we need to say permission from the student or is it like policy written words obvious?
I mean, and so now I'm gonna go back on the other way because this is how I vacillate. I think the issue is if you have a video, if you're taking a video of a basketball game, do you need the individual consent of each of the individuals to upload a clip? If there's no expectation of privacy at a
No,
sporting event.
no, there's not.
There's none.
No.
And there shouldn't,
No.
like the issue with locker rooms, cafeteria, restrooms, there's a legitimate expectation of privacy. That's a legal term of art. You all know what it means. Like there are places in a dressing room where you're not going to be monitored by video. It's not appropriate. That's legitimate expectation of privacy language, and that's enshrined in law. That's what the first sentence gets to, which if you have a legitimate expectation of privacy, and we're saying you do in a cafeteria, locker room, restroom, or on the buses, you cannot use those functions.
Correct.
The other issue is we're trying to prohibit people from being harassed or really people's likenesses being uploaded without their permission. I mean, that is an issue, but I think we should distinguish between, again, a science experiment with one student being uploaded in a way that they don't want is different than a sports game that might already be broadcast. We have our sports teams are often broadcast, not all of the games, but there are many games that are. And that, like, how do we account for that in the policy?
Cyberbullying is laid out in JICK.
It is.
So, I mean, it's main state law too. Can we just refer to as outlined in JICK?
Yeah, it's noted,
Yeah,
to your
it's-
point,
yeah.
it's noted in the cross references, yeah. I'm back to, do we just remove
Just
it?
strike the whole paragraph.
Strike the whole
Yeah,
thing?
yeah, because I mean, we have a policy that
Right.
outlines the law,
Mhm.
which is already the law, so.
And we've already specified above that it is, where to your point, where your expectation of privacy is, these are not.
So if this student that, or whoever it was that talked to Diane with what we've just done or will do, will that, when they go back in, will they have that same question again?
Did you hear that? If this was removed, would we have the same question?
Question came from Principal Teria, so
That's awesome.
I
Would you
think this
mind coming
question's
back?
been answered.
That is.
You're welcome to sit in the front row, right at
Yeah.
that seat.
Could you repeat that question? Sorry. No, in all seriousness, could that question be repeated?
His question is, given the conversation and the changes that are being discussed right now about the removal of the first paragraph on page 2, would that address the concerns that you have about, needing to monitor after-school events such as games, plays, any other competitions or activities?
Yeah, I think so. Sorry, I'm just reading the first couple of lines. I mean, I think, yeah, because the school rules apply. School rules apply and are enforced for after-school activities and during the school day. So I think, yeah, striking that I think would be fair. And to be honest, a lot of those other policies are device neutral, right? Whether it's a school device, private device, and we have authority under other policies to do those investigations as we see fit. So, yeah, I think that certainly provides some clarity, I think, and the language that was just being discussed around like where you have a legitimate expectation of privacy and where you don't. I'm not sure if that could be woven in somehow, but that certainly provided, I think, some clarity around the board's intent.
Okay, so do you want to make an amendment? Is there anybody interested in making an amendment?
Okay, look in the flow chart.
Yes. Get that ready.
Can we, I have a question now. Can we do multiple amendments? Is that?
You can,
Okay.
you can.
All right, I want to do a whole bunch.
I mean, we can keep discussing and see at the end. Is that what you may be suggesting?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we will, the other question I know that we discussed in policy, I just want to make sure I have, let me write this down first and then I'll say. Okay, the other conversation we had, there's two other conversations we had that, in policy that we didn't carry forward to this, that I think it was worth discussing. The first is, implementation. When are we expecting the schools to implement this? Do we wait? And our discussion was around waiting until, next school year. So September. Which would allow teachers time to designate areas.
But if we've updated the policy, doesn't that make it the policy?
Yeah, so
Because
we
then
would
there's-
have to,
So there's no old policy because there's a new policy. So it wouldn't it, that would just, it would happen
it would happen tomorrow.
because
Yeah,
that's
so
the
the
policy.
expectation would be then that teachers tomorrow would need to designate an area in their academic areas. Do you see what I'm saying?
That
Right.
doesn't feel.
But during our policy meeting, I think we discussed that, like, it would be the policy tomorrow, but there would be expectation that it would be implemented in a reasonable time frame. It wasn't.
That's correct.
So, but I don't think we have to put that in the policy that it's gonna take a reasonable time frame to get this off the ground. I think that's logical. If somebody tomorrow is like, the policy is not at 8:45 in the morning, is like, the policy is
Correct.
not being followed. The answer is that's because we have to go acquire the things to enforce the policy. That's not,
Right.
like, I don't think that's an issue, really. I don't want to wait until September. I think it should be uploaded because one of the issues right now that we're facing with this policy is that the current policy is not being followed. Or has not been followed, is they're trying to follow it now, but it's kind of this backward. And so I think this is fixing a lot of things, but I don't think we need to specify when it starts. I think when it gets up, when it gets on, like, when the ability to do it comes. I mean, the designated place tomorrow could be your backpack. And then if a teacher wants to make a different, they can change that designation. It's not. I don't think it's unduly burdensome to have this unramped quickly. Not to mention the fact that most of the schools are following something pretty closely right now anyway, so this is
It's
not.
really just the high school, yeah.
Yeah, and even the high school, most of the high school is following most of this policy, so this is not a chasm that with a lot of infrastructure that is not built. There's gonna be fine tuning in different rooms, which I think, again, a policy goes into effect. Good faith compliance is, if we get a designated spot next week, because that's as fast as we could get it on-ramped. That's legitimate. That's legit. I mean, that's good faith effort, good faith compliance. That's being reasonable, which
Mhm.
our superintendent is always reasonable. But I mean, like, realistically, like I trust our administrators to understand that and do their best, which is what they've done all along as soon as this was brought forward. I mean, really, they all have done a really good job of trying to comply, which has been complicated.
Yeah.
Grace
I-
has something.
I was wondering if the designated location that's named in the policy, if that like could vary from classroom to classroom, like do teachers get to choose that designated location? Okay, so it wouldn't have to be like a phone tree in every classroom, it could be a pocket or bag. Okay, thank you.
It could be we've had a lot of suggestions from parents. It could be a manila envelope, it could be a pencil pouch, it could be whatever the teacher. John says a trash can, it could be whatever the teacher suggests is the designated area.
Okay, thank you.
What were you gonna say?
So I was just going, to respond a little bit to your comment, Freyla. And, I think at the last paragraph, the last sentence in the second paragraph where it says the superintendent is authorized to develop any school rules necessary to implement the policy. So I would just point out to you, yes, I hear you saying that, that we could start this as soon as feasible, but I also want the board to recognize that there needs to be the time for the high school to develop the school rules and the discipline rubric around which they're going to then respond to students who are infections. And so I want to just advocate for thoughtful time for the team to develop that and not just have them, have a meeting tomorrow with their administrative team and whip something together and then, distribute it widely to students on Monday morning and say, well, this was time sensitive, so we had to just press play as fast as we could.
Yeah, that's definitely not the board's intent. We just
Yeah.
don't usually put a
No,
on
no, no,
in
and
the
I,
policies.
and I appreciate
Yeah.
that, right? But again, I think that, the definition of what is a reasonable time frame, you and I might have a shared definition on that. But if we polled, every other person in this room, we might find that there are 20 different definitions of that. And so I just want to be clear before the board votes on this, that the public shares our definition of what a reasonable timeline is. And I'm not sure that if we just have a handshake agreement about that, that will satisfy other people in the community.
Okay. I would just wonder if there's a lot of student energy around this too, so it's nice to have kind of that at the forefront. I fear that if we were to wait till next school year, there could just be a lot of ongoing. So I would wonder if, I don't know that it has to be baked into the policy, but, or not, but, like April break is like roughly 6 weeks away. I don't know if that's enough time to draw up all these things, let the teachers get their plans in place, not feel like anything's getting to rush. The students still have time with it between April break and the end of the school year to kind of absorb some of this, and then it comes in September and it's not just like another new thing. While also giving our school system a chance to 6 weeks to make a call about things and a plan.
Would you be thinking of like amending the policy to where we think it'll go and then tabling it until the end of that time? Like what, procedural mechanism here is really what I'm wondering. Like we don't put an on-ramp in our policy, so we don't put like this will become implemented, will begin in April, after April vacation, in September of 2026, whatever year it is. So as a policy, how do we procedurally do that? I mean, we could table this again. We could, I'm not advocating for that. I'm laying out options. We could table it. We could make an amendment where we put an on-ramp in, which feels very weird. Because it's not something that we normally do. I'm sort of what procedurally.
And
are
I don't
people
know the answer,
looking
to be
for?
honest. I'm just hearing like the feedback from the people, like we're taking a policy and dictating down, and then we're hearing feedback back. So I'm just kind of responding. I don't. Feeding discussion. I thought you were gonna say something. I heard you. Oh.
Yeah, I don't really. Can we just accept that this is going to take some time to implement?
I mean, I think, yes, we can all generally accept that this is gonna take time, and I think that it's going to be imperative that the public on with this is going to have to be patient with us. This is a new procedure for the high school.
Yeah.
The expectation that they, to Diane's point, that they come in tomorrow with a fully planned brand new procedure is not reasonable. That's not a reasonable expectation to me.
I guess follow-up question, to kind of go from, Alyssa's previous statement, and taking into account, other comments that I've had, that I've heard this evening about the implementation timeline. To your point, it would feel really weird to write a date into this. At the same time, I guess my question would be, could there be, outside of this policy, a recommendation by the board that, that this policy be ready to implement when we return from April vacation?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Right? And then we communicate that out and we provide that advance notice, so that it's, a clear message being sent to the members of our school community and our families that, here is, whatever, wherever you all land on the final policy. And then, this is when you can expect to see those changes be put into action.
And point of clarification. Is that enough time? Do you believe, how much time do you believe you need to develop the policies that you want? And that's, I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Right.
But I don't want to throw a dart at a board and pick a number that sounds good in my head, because I'm not the
Right.
one doing
And
it.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm also trying to be sensitive to the board wanting, to put a period at the end of this sentence and move forward. And I do believe that, there would be some value in, moving this forward before the end of the year so that we could see how does the discipline continuum that gets developed worked? And do we test that out for that final stint of the school year? And then we reassess and are reflective and take that feedback in as an administrative team, and then decide if there are changes that need to be made for the fall.
That would be like your normal process with
Yeah.
any policy
Right,
or any.
but it would be, it would provide us that opportunity versus, again, I think there are pros and cons about whatever time you start, but if we started in the fall, we would just have to own whatever that continuum was for the year, because it would be quite unusual to change a discipline policy once the school year has started.
You also don't want to be building it all
Right.
year.
But if we came back after April break where we had, about 6 weeks of school left, that would give us an opportunity to kind of test
Test it.
drive and make sure that, that we're building capacity and understanding amongst our students and our staff, and that we're responding in an appropriate way.
And so other than the conversation we're having now and the meeting minutes from this meeting, and obviously the recording of the meeting where we're discussing after April is kind of where we're coalescing around. Do you want any other official record of the board sort of understanding that we understand that this policy is not gonna be implemented. Whatever policy, if a policy is passed today, is not gonna be implemented tomorrow, but will plan to be put in place by the end of April, at the end of April vacation. How do you want us to formalize that, other than the discussion we're having and the meeting minutes that'll follow?
Yeah, again, personally, I think that if it is reflected in the meeting minutes, that does become an official record.
Yes.
And so I would feel comfortable with that. And if there were members of the public who questioned why we were waiting until after April vacation, it would be a clear direct to, look at the meeting minutes from the meeting wherein the discussion and the agreement took place.
Right, where the board agrees that we will, is there any disagreement with that the board agrees we will, the high school, this will be implemented after April break? Okay. And Cheryl's got it, so, perfect. And then you can also publish this in the newsletter, the district newsletter, it can go in the high school newsletter. There's a few opportunities to get that in the
Right.
middle school newsletter, right? We have a few opportunities to get the word out. Well, I guess all the newsletters.
But not in tomorrow's newsletter.
Not in tomorrow's newsletter.
That, and I do think it's a good thing for families who will need to know when they can get a hold of their students and let them know they got to pick up their sister or brother, or et cetera, and
Yeah, and I think it's good.
family
too.
planning.
Yeah, I think with the school newsletters, it could be a good, not that I want to prescribe, but it could be a good reminder that if they need their students, they can call the office and here's the office phone number.
Can I bring up another point of discussion?
Please.
I don't want to interrupt anyone or cut anyone off. It had come up in the first read and I was curious. I did note that there is nothing in the second draft about when to revisit this policy. And I was curious if you guys had had a discussion that led to that decision.
We did have a discussion. Yeah. Yeah, we did. No, we went back and forth on if we should include it in here and ultimately, decided not to. I kind of am in the same mindset that we could do what Diane is saying, reflect in the minutes what our expectation is. I personally would like to see this evaluated after a year, so it would be really like the end of next school year, right? Which would give a full school year of data, because we have data points already. We asked teachers for their opinions via a survey. We did hear back that from the teachers that some of the questions could have been, one of the questions could have been a little better, or the answers could have been a little bit different, clearer. And so I think that can be cleaned up, but we also asked for data points from the high school. I know that the high school, the way that they took that survey and the data is the data, but the way they answered the survey questions was in group meetings. And so I know that we heard from Diane that the schools tend to operate as teams. They don't operate individually. And so that group think was really successful in developing these answers. And I don't see why that would change. I guess in my mind, I see the group that continues to work on this is the teachers and the administrators, by providing us the data through Diane, what it looks like. What does implementation look like? What successes did we see? What areas of concern do we notice? What are some things we would like you to know after a year of the policy? That's in my mind what I would like to see, what I suggested at policy. Yeah, please.
I just want to add to that. So we did put in there, it's a line that doesn't, it's an aspirational line, which it's the very top. It's like the third paragraph down that says, the school board will continue to evaluate and impact the privately owned devices have on our students. And we'll continue to evaluate our policy to meet our students' needs. We didn't put a specific timeline in here. And the reason for that is also because of how policies come before the board. So like we, in theory, have a reasonable place to rotate through policies to review them. But when, this policy was not on track to be reviewed, but because of public comment and because of interest, we brought it forward to have this really important discussion. But for that advocacy, this policy would never have been reviewed. We wouldn't be looking at it right now. We would be right through the B's into the beginning of the C section of policy. I'm not even making it up, I'm being totally honest with you. And so if and when issues arise, this policy will come right back up. Like if there are problems, if there are issues, if the implementation is possible, if we miss something big or little, the school administration can bring it up, the public can bring it up. A member of this committee could bring it up. And if asked to have it added to the policy agenda, and I've not yet said no to that request. Most people are not clamoring for policy to be reviewed, but in instances when policy does need to be reviewed, that's how it gets reviewed. Sort of, if there's an issue, we review that policy.
Sure. I just wasn't, I think the high school team is kind of clearly showing a lot of, intention in their way of reviewing these policies and moving forward. I guess where my mind had been at that time had been that just tech in general changes so frequently. I mean, not that kids don't and what they experience and all those things doesn't, but tech itself is so challenging. And I think with how fast things are moving, I personally just, I think there's a lot of value in a stable policy, short of a issue arising. I don't want to disrespect our other policies or processes, but I was kind of curious about kind of writing in or baking in a like a 5-year trigger. Like if this hasn't been looked at, nothing's come up, at least review it, at least look at it. Because this was a 7-year policy, is that correct? Again,
From 2017.
2017 to 2014, this was a 7-year-old policy.
I push back.
You're making me
yeah.
question my math, John.
Yeah.
But I just didn't know, if we could bake or put something like that in, so that it doesn't get lost in okay, well, we're only in the Ds and this is a J and it's 2029 and.
My pushback to that is gonna be, one, we don't have that in our policies where we have these triggers. And for most of our policies, there's a couple of notable exceptions, like there's emergency policy that we have to look at every year annually. There's very few policies, and I don't feel comfortable pushing this onto future boards. All of our terms will be up before that 5 years is, and we can't and shouldn't be telling future boards what to do.
That's fair.
And just as, every year we do review board goals, so it can be added in and changed as the next turnover of board members.
That's a great point.
So every year, we all get together and we come up with district goals together as a board. And then as our terms end, there's gonna be another one, so every year, there's a new one. Whoever's sitting on the board at that time when we review it, will go in there. If this is something that we feel like needs to be added in there as something as a district-wide goal, that might be something to be discussed then as a board goal. Because I'm with Fraley, I don't want to push this on to a board 5 years from now, just to be like, hey, you got to revisit it right now. It doesn't make sense timeline wise.
They won't know to do it.
Right.
I know that sounds crazy, but like there's no flags in our policies that like, ooh, it needs to be reviewed. You have to have somebody who knows that. The board goals is the place to have this embedded. Actually, that's a brilliant suggestion because it will force us to keep talking about it, because I don't want to stop this conversation. I mean, I want to get this policy done because we have a lot of other policies that we have not worked on. But I don't want to short this one, but I also don't want to short other policies. But I think that's the right place, because that's going to continue this conversation so that we keep oversight on it and that keeps it fresh. And then in 5 years, if the board's like, we don't care about technology, we're going back to clay tablets. Good luck with that. But like, do you mean like we can make any aspiration goal we want for them? We can't make them do it. The goals is the way to make sure we don't stop the conversation though, and that we keep our eyes on this really important piece. So like, I really like that suggestion.
Mm-hmm. And if anybody's curious, our goals happen in July. Yes. All right, is there any other discussion?
Yeah. Yeah,
What are you doing hunting and pecking down there?
that's what I learned in, I took typing, talk about technology. We had typewriters in classes here at Scarborough my freshman year. ASDFJKL, semicolon. Because Frayla wasn't here earlier, I did want to, well, I don't type every day, so I don't have to worry about this. We were talking about under 2, where it says high school, where it says may not use privately owned electronic devices, blah, blah, blah. And then down at the bottom, it says may use their cell phone if a staff member gives student specific permission. I was wondering if that's something that we could either combine or put one after the other so that they were together instead of having one at the top, one at the bottom. So I mentioned that earlier and then.
Yeah, he thinks they're related, so they should be next to each other.
Or
Or
combined into
together.
one to where it's, you can not use it unless said by, you know what I'm saying? So we talked about an amendment. I didn't want to make one without you knowing that I had already, because especially I don't want you to be mad at me. But that's what I wanted to let you know. So if that comes up, you're not, you know.
I don't care if you move the order around. I don't want you to combine them. That's my preference.
Okay, well,
Because I don't.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
One bullet point, one thought. Bullet point, one thought.
He said he doesn't want she said, I don't want the bullets combined, and he said, why? And then what was your answer?
One bullet point, one thought. You're gonna use run-on sentences, use run-on sentences, but if you're gonna use bullets, one bullet point, one thought. It makes it easier to read. Just-
But
Okay.
reorienting
Yeah,
them though,
fine.
to
Well,
put
perfectly fine.
the last bullet up as the second bullet.
Yes.
then, Yeah.
Okay, so we have 2 pieces to amend. If somebody would like to make their motion. Let me fix it.
Do you want to do this in one motion or do you want to?
Yeah, you can
finish
just do it in
discussion?
one. Oh, wait, was there any more discussion?
Yeah, I think there's a little more discussion.
There is?
Yeah. So, going back to the before and after school part, I would advocate for keeping that language, although I'm open to clarifying it, because I think there is a period of time after the bus before school starts, specifically for kids who are on the bus or kids who get dropped off early and are sitting in room. I don't want to, one of the critiques from the first draft was being very clear about when. And so that, I think that is important. And then the after school was specifically so that there's no issue with after school activities. So I don't know if anybody has some language, because I thought about eliminating that, and I don't want to leave
Can you
that,
just?
because we're enumerating when it can be used. I don't want it to be unclear that if you get off the bus and you are not yet in your classroom and start an academic time, that you can be on that's a passing time, which we had a whole passing time discussion that I don't want to revisit. So.
Can you
So-
just write the bell times?
Yeah.
Like 8:45 to 3:15,
Well, no, for the first bell is then the passing, then the second bell.
7:30 to, or, I don't know.
So would before the time not count as passing time?
This is the discussion we had.
But like, that's why if, I don't think that, so I had suggested taking that just out,
Yeah.
before and after school out, and then just leaving it as passing time. But you feel like it needs the clarification to have before and after school written in there.
You
should
could
be
start the
necessary.
bullet by saying during the school day. And then you wouldn't need before and after school.
That's fine.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, I like.
I support that language.
During the school day, students may use. Same time. Okay. Testing time in between classes. Okay, I think I've got all three of those put in. So you ready? Any further discussion? On anything? You have something?
Do you have this document written so that I can see the
Yeah,
wording
let me.
as you read it?
Yeah, let me share this to you. This is just the draft that we've. Yep. Does everybody have it? Actually, no, hold on. There you go. I'm sorry, Abby, and Grace, will you check? Did I just send you the flow chart? Did I send you the flow chart or did I send you the policy? Oh, I didn't mean to send that. I apologize. I mean, you get it now, but. Okay,
All right.
you're welcome. Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to amend policy JFCK, the draft policy that we're currently considering. The amendments that I'd like to offer would include that on number 2, to add the phrase during the school day, comma, before high school students grades 9 through 12.
Oh. Mhm.
To add the last bullet, which currently reads, may use their cell phone if a staff member gives students specific permission to use their device for a clear educational purpose. From the bottom bullet to the second bullet.
Mhm.
To strike in what is now the last bullet, but is the 6th bullet, and before and after school from the first sentence, so that the
Mhm.
new sentence would read, may use their cell phones during lunch, passing time, and between classes,
Mhm.
period.
Mhm.
And to strike under section 1, this entire paragraph of in other school locations, students are required to obtain permission before photographing, taking videos, or recording any individual. Students are also required to obtain prior permissions before posting any photos, videos, or sound recordings of individuals taken at school or during school activities on social media or elsewhere, period.
So we have a amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the amendment? Okay, all in favor of voting for the amendment as presented? And that's unanimous. Okay, so we are going to return to the main motion. We have a main motion on the floor as amended. Is there any further discussion on the main motion as amended? All right, all in favor? All right, that is also unanimous. Thank you. All right, agenda item 10.0 is adjournment. If there are no objections, we will adjourn at 9:19 PM. Thank you so much.